Hello. Hi, Dipti, this is Abhishek.
Uh, uh, I can hear your voice clearly.
Hi Rahul,
Hi, good morning. How are you?
good, good.
Good morning, Dave sir.
Good morning, Ji.
Good morning, Mr. Vishal. How are you?
Yeah, good morning. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Vishal Ji.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman.
Hello.
Hi, good morning. I was waiting for Mr. Ravinder to join. He is on his way from to airport, Delhi airport. So he will join shortly. Good morning, Ravinder ji.
गुड मॉर्निंग। आपको नाम दिख रहा है मेरा? क्योंकि आई डोंट नो वेदर नेम केम और नॉट।
Yeah, we can hear you, but your video is not there.
Just a minute. Now I believe you may be able to see it.
Yeah, we can see you now.
चलिए, good.
So
So
good
I
morning,
don't know how
everyone.
good the connection will be, but I am trying.
Okay, okay. Thank you for joining. So we can start. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of CII, I welcome all the panelists and participants to the second Northern Region Conference on Telemedicine. The theme is from traditional to digital ecosystem, potential opportunities and challenges. In the inaugural session, we have Mr. Ravinder. He is an IS officer from Uttar Pradesh cadre, 1999 batch, and presently is Secretary Health, Government of Uttar Pradesh. Before moving to parent cadre of Uttar Pradesh, Mr. Ravinder was Joint Secretary at Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Government of India. He was one of the key person and instrumental in India's rapid strides in World Bank ease of doing business. So he has been recognized by Honorable Prime Minister for his effort. Mr. Ravinder has also served in various capacities in Uttar Pradesh, like Additional Commissioner Commercial Tax, Noida, and other capacities. He is Masters in Public Administration from Maxwell School of Citizenship, uh, Syracuse University, New York, US. He is also CA from ICAI, CS from ICSI, Cost Accountant from Institute of Cost Accountant of India. He has he become graduate from Sri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi University. We also have Mr. Vishal Baid. He is co-chairman of CI Northern Region Committee on Healthcare and also president of Polymedicure, which is a health service company with employee base of 1784 employees and founded in 1995. We also have Mr. Manish Gupta. He is chairman of CI Chandigarh, and he started his unit is known as Synergy Enterprises, which was started in toward year 2000. And he supplies. He is active participant of the defense forces, especially Indian Air Force and DRDO labs. He is also executive member of Aeronautical Society of India. We also have Mr. Deepak Kansal, Vice Chairman CII. He is also Managing Director of Zim Ventures, and with the experience of over 20 years, besides having an expertise in payroll management and manpower outsourcing services. His company is also into HR solution, HR outsourcing, as well as HR payroll. We'll also have Mr. Rahul Ranjan. He is Director Technomed Group. He is a member from CI Uttar Pradesh. Mr. Rahul has experience of over 15 years in medical industry. He is a detail-oriented multitasker with his expertise in marketing. Now with this, I hand over to Mr. Manish Gupta for formal welcome remarks.
Thank you, Dev. I'm audible? Dev, I'm audible?
Yes, please, we can hear you, sir.
Okay. On behalf of CII,
Manish ji, I'm back.
I'm audible, na? Wait. So on behalf of CII and on my personal behalf, I would like to welcome the dignitaries and the participants to the second edition of the CII Northern Region Virtual Conference on Telemedicine. Our warm welcome, Sri Ravinder Ji, Secretary, Health, Government of Uttar Pradesh. Thank you, sir, for taking out your time from a busy schedule to join us. You, at the help of the Health Department of the state, Uttar Pradesh, has done excellent work in dealing with COVID-19 infection. Today, telemedicine is one of the fastest growing sectors in healthcare. Specifically, COVID-19 has enhanced and accelerated the role that telemedicine plays with our healthcare system. It is reshaping the landscape of healthcare delivery in India and is being recognized as the future of global healthcare. Telehealth addresses and achieves the basic tenets of healthcare reform, providing the population with access to improved and high-quality patient-centric care, enhances some outcomes while reducing per capita expenditure. Studies have shown that the benefits of telehealth include significantly improved outcomes, efficient care delivery, as well as reduction in mortality rate, hospitalization, length of stay, readmissions, and healthcare costs. Telehealth has enhanced the patient satisfaction due to its convenience and patient-centric approaches. Telemedicine is a valuable tool that patient can use to evaluate and treat by healthcare provided from where they can be. Telemedicine services are often offered at lower cost and make availability from some to obtain healthcare easy to achieve. With the use of economic tools, providers and facilities are determining this to be true. Cost analysis provides facilities and provides with a significant figure when determining the value of implementing a telemedicine system. The greatest value associated with telemedicine is not only the lower wait times and the reduced costs that are achieved, but the improvement in patient satisfaction and allowing the patient more involvement in the care they receive. Ladies and gentlemen, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the scope and opportunities for telemedicine has greatly over the globe, with India no exception. To push the telemedicine revolution in the country, the Board of Governors, MCI, passed new regulation called the Indian Medical Council Professional Conduct Etiquette and Ethics Amendment Regulation 2020 for this matter. Earlier, on account of lack of clear guidelines, there existed significant ambiguity for registered medical professionals, raising doubts on the practice of telemedicine. The 2018 judgment of Honorable High Court of Bombay has created uncertainty about the place and legitimacy of telemedicine because an appropriate framework didn't exist. But the MCR regulation includes both the overarching principles and a practical framework. While the overarching principle would be common to all future guidelines, the latter specifically tries to address the current need in the wake of COVID-19 outbreak. The purpose of these guidelines is to give practical advice to doctors so that all services and models of care used by doctors and healthcare are encouraged to consider the use of telemedicine as a part of normal practice. These guidelines assist the medical practitioner in pursuing a second course of action to provide effective and safe medical care founded on current information, available resources, and patient needs to ensure patient and provider safety. With this, I request Mr. Rahul Ranjan, Director, Technomed Group, to give his opening remarks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Manishji. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of CII and myself, I would like to welcome the participants and dignitaries to the second edition of CII Virtual Conference on Telemedicine. First, I would like to introduce myself. I am Rahul Rajan, Director, Technomed Group. My company is into imports and channel sales of medical devices, capital equipments, disposables of numerous companies. We started our journey 15 years back and have a strong presence in all the major hospitals and institutions of the state. We also wish to enter into manufacturing of medical devices and consumables and join the glorious league of Make in India companies. We have a well-trained sales staff and service engineer based out of all the major cities in the state. So now coming to the today's theme. So as we know, COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdown measures have changed the way we lead our life, and the cities and metros in particular have started adopting digitalization in the healthcare in the major way. Though there is a huge gap and rather scope because the adoption rate is very, very low because of the awareness and the accessibility to the internet. And any further effort by the government or the industry would definitely enhance the healthcare access to the people in the downtrodden areas. And accordingly, we can match the global healthcare standards. So talking about telemedicine, it started in India around 2 decades back when Indian Space Research Organization had done a this. In fact, they started this telemedicine, and subsequently many companies they started adopting it in the bigger way. Just to give an example, SGPGI, which is a very reputed institute in Lucknow, they have got a dedicated telemedicine department. And if we speak about the cardiology segment, the live surgeries are being telecasted to a group of target audience in a bigger conference. There's a two-way dialogue and discussion between the operator panelist and panel of specialists and the doctors in the audience. This has been proven to be the best and the fastest way to showcase the newer advancements and latest hardware available globally to a bigger set of audience without being actually physically present there. Also, today we hear a lot about robotic surgery, where an operator doesn't have to travel to a particular city, but he can actually sit in his own set of lab and he can do the surgery right sitting there. So again, here this is a very expensive and a very rare therapy these days. But I'm sure with many companies coming in, this technology will definitely increase, and the cost of surgery would come down. Government is also doing its bit. Recently, Minister of Health launched e-Sanjeevani OPD, a patient to doctor teleconsultation service, and it has completed nearly 1 million telemedicine consultations till now. So this approach helps to save a lot of time for the patient as well as the doctor. The doctor can attend a greater number of patients, and patient also in the very far off places don't have to actually travel from the village to the city to have the access of the specialist in their own city. So there's several telemedicine apps which has come up in the recent time, and this has during the lockdown it has proven to be a greatest saver for many of the people in the mankind. Uh, we expect that these new digital initiatives by India can leverage the momentum gained in telemedicine to extend the healthcare access to the deeper pockets in the country. So while the telemedicine cannot replace the traditional medical consultation and hospital visits for emergency conditions and medical procedure, it will certainly reduce the pressure on the healthcare system in a vast way. And populous country like India, with the disproportionate healthcare facility, this can definitely help a larger section of the society to have a better healthcare facility. So the government therefore has government needs to drive a lot of awareness drive to make people aware of the telemedicine, and there has to be some small setups in the remote villages where if people are not literate enough to log into a website, there can be someone who can help them to do this and connect to their specialist doctor. Telemedicine, which is only one component of much diverse digital health plan, we as an industry has a bigger role to play in terms of coming up with the revolutionary ideas and facilitating technologies to fulfill the dream of our dynamic Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi, where people in the remotest of the village will not have to travel to places, as I told earlier, to access the necessary medical facility. So that's it from my side. I would now invite the next speaker to express his view, and let's discuss our ideas and how industry can pitch in and help our nation to be healthcare sufficient in the coming years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rahul. Thank you so much for your opening remarks and giving the importance of telemedicine in the to come. I would now request Mr. Vishal Das, Co-Chairman, CII Northern Region, and President of Policy Medical, for his opening remarks and contact details. Mr. Rahul, Mr. Vishal.
Thank you, Manishji. On behalf of CII and on my personal behalf, I once again welcome the dignitaries, Mr. Ravinder, Secretary Health, Government of Uttar Pradesh, and other dignitaries, and all the participants to the second edition of CII Northern Region Virtual Conference on Telemedicine. Being the co-chairman of the Regional Committee on Healthcare, it's my honor to be a part of this esteemed inaugural session. As part of the regional agenda, we have been interacting with leaders from various healthcare segments, and one important point which is common with all these wings is to know more on moving towards from traditional to digital ecosystem. It seems that the time for telemedicine is very good in India. According to Medical Council of India, the doctor-patient ratio is as low as 1 is to 2000, if not lower than that. The fact is, most quality doctors practice in large cities where they enjoy more significant opportunities for practice. This unfortunately leaves a massive population of Indian citizens without primary medical health care, and they eventually land in the hands of quacks. Although telemedicine has been spottily in India, has been used spottily in Indian healthcare so far, the COVID-19 pandemic provided the national health system an unprecedented opportunity to make a concerted effort to increase access and coverage. Healthcare providers have been incorporating telemedicine system to reduce doctor-patient visits and help in breaking the chain of transmissions and infections. Despite the fact that India lacks good physical infrastructure, some quality hospitals of the country use state-of-the-art medical technology. More importantly, India has a superb digital infrastructure that allows fast and cost-effective data sharing. The country has thus been an excellent breeding ground for telehealthcare providers. Telemedicine is bridging the healthcare gap in India. The most respectable, well-trained doctors can now treat patients in far-flung, distant parts of the country with a click on their device. Thanks to the good digital infrastructure, patients living far away can get proper medical treatment and care. It is widely said in CII, geography is history. Hundreds of kilometers of distance now present no obstacle to quality medical health care. The medical and communication technologies are simple to use and affordable. Research has shown that almost 75% of people who were on telemedicine got successful diagnosis and treatment. Telehealth has seen a massive surge fueled by the global COVID-19 pandemic as consumers and providers have sought various methods to safely access and deliver healthcare. With the onset of pandemic, the Indian telehealthcare industry has witnessed a massive boost. Teleconsultations, e-pharmacies, and remote monitoring have gained trust and popularity among both patients and healthcare professionals. With the massive growth that the industry has witnessed, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare along with Niti Aayog, the Board of Governors, Medical Council of India, has released the first set of formal guidelines to regulate practice across the nation in March 2020. The step has boosted the growth of telehealth across the urban landscape, and it is deep rooted in urban India today. However, rural India still suffers from lack of infrastructure and proper penetration of telehealth. According to a recent study conducted on the e-health market scenario, the industry is expected to reach 10.6 billion US dollars by 2025. It is the medium that can bridge the healthcare gap, access gap between urban and rural India. With the promise that the digital health holds for effective healthcare delivery, there is an urgent need to implement it in the remotest region of India. Telehealthcare can become a boon for rural healthcare also. With guidelines published by Government of India on telemedicines, I think we are moving on this direction. The market is seeing rapid growth, which is helping reshape the healthcare sector from being a provider-centric to volume-based model to a patient-centric value-based model. In the end, I would like to say the recently launched scheme of Ayushman Bharat digital mission launched by our Honorable Prime Minister will be a great milestone, and this will go a long way in enabling the cause of telehealth, telemedicine, and this will again bridge the divide between rural and the urban India. With these thoughts, thank you so much for inviting me to this conference. Over to you, Manish ji.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vishal. I think now my voice is more audible. Dave, now my voice is more audible or not?
Yeah, your voice is audible.
Yeah,
Actually,
it's audible.
as we are moving towards the more technology side, we sometimes lack that technological wish, and then we have to see what is happening. So thank you so much, Mr. Vishal, for setting the context and giving us the input regarding the guidelines and the future for this telemedicine. Now I would request Mr. Ravinder, Secretary Health, Government of Uttar Pradesh, for his address to this August gathering and give regarding his input for the telemedicine. Mr. Ravinder, please.
So, Manishi, he is entering airport. He has just texted me. So
Okay.
he will take another 2-3 minutes,
Okay.
For this security thing.
Right.
Meanwhile, we can have, some sort of discussion.
Yeah, I would request that again. I would request that Mr. Vishal to kindly throw that what is what happening in CI, this healthcare panel you are doing in the, from your sector, so we can see replicate those things within the northern area itself.
So Manishji, I think it's a very valid point. And at CI, regional level, we are trying to be future ready for, any kind of pandemic or, not now, in the northern region, US, now we are seeing the dengue is there, then, different, seasonal disease are there. So we are promoting among our members the idea of, first of all, capacity building, whether it is the medicine industry, whether medical devices, even our membership in the hospitals also. So they are also, rapidly ramping up their capacities. So we don't see what happened in the second wave where there was shortage of medicines, oxygens, or equipments. So people have started preparing, and the theme for the forthcoming 6 months or 8 months is to be future ready, and not only the COVID pandemic, but the overall theme is to keep our infrastructure robust and be ready for any eventuality.
No, no,
And
I must.
yeah, and in
I
this succession, we also have our regional conference on healthcare, which is
okay.
spread over 9 states. This is happening on 5th. So I request all participants to please join in on that conference also.
Sure. And I must compliment the readiness not only from the CI side, but also the proactive steps taken by the all the states and the ministry in controlling this pandemic in a very short span. In fact, second wave we could control within the region of UP, Punjab, and Chandigarh and Himachal as well. And again, I'm requesting all our participants on 5th of October, we have a healthcare summit. So I request that this should be spread to all the participants, and many people should join this healthcare summit for their own benefit and learning what is going on presently.
Manishji, one more point, I think vaccination drive is going at a very rapid pace. In our northern region membership, we are encouraging all our member companies to, encourage their workers, staff, families to get vaccinated as soon as possible. And definitely, we see a lot of companies. We did a survey, and a lot of people had their almost 80% of the staff are vaccinated. So I would encourage everyone here
So,
to please, whoever are left for their vaccinations should go for vaccinations and promote and aggressively, I would say, support this cause.
Ravinderji is available now. Manishji, you can invite him.
Yeah. So I welcome Mr. Ravinder, Secretary Health, Government of Uttar Pradesh. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time and attending this conference. I would request for giving a special address for telemedicine and contact setting for all the participants of this session. Mr. Ravinder, please.
Thank you, Manishji, and I would like to thank CII for inviting me here. Unfortunately, I have to travel urgently, and I'm right now at the airport, so I will be very brief. I will not be taking too much of time because I believe connectivity will also be an issue. Speakers before me have already emphasized why telemedicine is important, and considering that a large part, especially for states like Uttar Pradesh, lives in rural India, where we are not able to provide adequate number of doctors to them. We have to look at the innovative solutions to ensure that everybody gets the adequate health and medical facilities. And considering that, even if I am expected to go and live in a rural area and serve people of rural area, I will also consider it a little difficult considering where my children are going to study and what kind of facilities I'm going to get there. Similar issues are faced by the doctors, and that is why we find it challenging to ensure their attendance in the rural area and all those things have take place. So telemedicine can there provide a very good opportunity for us to make sure that these health facilities are available to rural India. Now, as already told, that government has started e-Sanjeevani platform where we are providing these services to people across the state. So a number of things are still required to be done. One, we have to still make sure that adequate number of doctors are available on the platform so that the wait time on the platform itself is not too long for people to appreciate that, yes, they are getting something better than what they will get through a physical infrastructure. Second, still in rural India, a number of people believe that until a stethoscope is put on them, they are not getting a proper treatment. So there are issues of accepting a treatment through a distant model, which we have to understand that these are issues uh, which we have to handle specifically, because acceptability, even in e-commerce, a number of people find it very difficult to order online because they lack faith in the system. So similar kind of things we will face here, and we have to make sure that slowly and steadily, by popularizing it among people, taking the right knowledge to them, and making sure that the treatment provided to them through telemedicine, which is effective, which serve the purpose, we can create credibility of the entire system. And for that, we have still a large stretch to cover, and we have to make sure that telemedicine becomes something which people rely upon. Again, when there are a number of things which have come up, there is a concept of ATM, health ATM, which can do a number of diagnostic tests by itself, and by putting a simple trained person there, we can make sure that a large number of tests can be conducted, and then that health ATM itself helps people to connect through to a doctor who goes through the results and can immediately tell the person what remedial issues are to be taken, and even a prescription can be generated immediately. So such kind of innovations are going to go a long way in promoting telemedicine. And I believe a large number of young entrepreneurs are working towards making these things possible. And a large number of procedures can be done distantly. For example, while you require a physical machine to take an X-ray, the radiologist need not sit there. He can actually go through the X-ray at a distant place and give his recommendations from there. So requirement of having a radiologist at every place where we have an X-ray machine goes down. And this is how we can make sure that without actually incurring a large amount of expenditure, because one thing which comes is that in India, we have to increase the health expenditure without actually increasing the expenditure, because we are using one radiologist for multiple locations. We can provide better healthcare facilities to people. So, and one area which can be very helpful in telemedicine is artificial intelligence, because with the help of good big data training, even machines can predict about a lot of diseases. And we have to see that in this area, we need to go forward and make sure that benefit of artificial intelligence is available to people. And that can significantly reduce the requirement of specialists. And once we are able to train our systems, then it has shown that even in case of uh, very deadly diseases also, the predictions made by machines are we have to work towards, and we have to continuously work in improving technology, bringing information to people at large to make sure that acceptability of telemedicine increases. And then I believe this can be a very good tool. And this is something which is from my side. From government, we are very open to listening to the new companies and uh, understanding what kind of tools they have brought in. But certainly adaptability in government is slow, and that people have to understand that we, since we are using public monies, we have to a large extent see that the systems which have been proved are implemented, and there is a good use of public money. So that's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ravinder, especially for your valuable time. I know, understand you are traveling and still you've taken your time for a busy schedule. And sir, you being the helm of the health department of the state, Uttar Pradesh, I must compliment from CII on personal behalf that you have done excellent work in dealing with the COVID-19 infection. And CII has always been very proactive along with your and your team and department. We would love to more work more association with your department. Just taking a few more minutes, I would request in case you can take one or two queries or questions from the delegates present over here, in case that is possible.
Certainly.
Okay. Is it possible that one or two questions can be taken for the Mr. Ravinder?
Sure, sure. So I'm requesting Mr. Manik Rajendran is there, if, and Abhishek Malhotra, if you have any query, or Rahul, if you have any.
I request the queries to be please give your introduction, brief introduction, and please address the question to the secretary. Mr. Manik.
Hi, this is Manik. I'm okay. I do not have any question at this point. Thank you.
Abhishek.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Just getting between a matter in court, and that's why you would perhaps see that the collar is off, the tie is yet to come up. I will just be joining you very shortly. Just give me a moment to just get in from one screen to the other. I have no questions there.
Vishal, would you like to address the secretary?
Sir, I think first of all, sir, our compliments from CII Northern Region for such a fantastic COVID management in the largest state of the country. And we understand, sir, with large populations and seasons changing, dengue is there, then, all these things. Sir, what are your thoughts on, being future ready against all these pandemics? We understand there is sometimes Japanese influenza, malaria. What are your thoughts on this, sir? What is the state doing in, just being future ready?
See, when you look at our experience with COVID, initially when we started, and at that time I was in Government of India, we thought that we are going to need a number of ventilators, and government immediately responded with procuring a large number of ventilators. But as it unfolded, we came to know that ventilators are not that large requirement as the oxygen is going to be, and then government worked on that. And obviously there are always limitation on what is the kind of numbers that you are going to see. You predict data, but those predictions again are predictions, and you never know what the real situation will be. So obviously having a good health infrastructure helps, but then there are always trade-offs between other kind of facilities that you have to create for your people. Considering that we are not a very developed kind of a country, we have still created a very good infrastructure where we have been able to handle things. But like in second wave, requirement of having more oxygen capabilities was felt. And then now government has done a lot of effort. They have installed a large number of oxygen generation plants. But we don't know whether this is how COVID is going to behave, because this pandemic has shown that it can be unpredictable. So while we make arrangements for the known factors and indicators, there can always be some indicators which you never know whether they will be there or not. So it's always a challenge that what are the things which we have to, like remdesivir, we don't know exactly what is its use, but it was extremely in demand and there was a crunch. Then tocilizumab became another drug. So you have to continuously keep working, and it's like a challenge where you have to continuously work. So I believe we are mentally ready. We have even our firms which are producing these drugs, they are mentally ready that if required, they will be making their efforts to ramping up things immediately. But how exactly it unfolds, we will be able to know once it's done. Once we see the situation, only then we will be in a position to see whether we made the right choices or the wrong choices. And in a post-mortem exercise, everybody is intelligent. So people can say this should have been done, this should have been done, but you have to balance within your available resources, within your available know-how. You have to make sure that you try to generate maximum for your people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary. There is one question from Mr. Nitin Agarwal. He says, how do you see Uttar Pradesh adopting EMR and HMSIS application, that is for integrating the health record, setting up Janta clinics, providing unified care to patients, setting up tele-ICU for digitization of the entire healthcare? How do we see Uttar Pradesh going ahead in this regard?
See, right now, NDHM is a very novel concept with us. And while we have already digitized our data for our facilities and our healthcare providers, this has not happened for the private sector, first of all. Then we are also understanding what exactly is required to be done for implementation of NDHM and how we have to interact with the central software and whether we need to make changes to our software and look at what is being provided centrally or is used by the other states. So we are at a very early stage for this, and we are studying this. Right now, what we have requested from Government of India is to integrate our health facilities and our healthcare providers in their system. And then we are trying to identify a few hospitals where we will try to roll out a pilot. So, very initial stage, we are in discussions. So, nothing more than that I can say.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your promising and enterprising words. It really encourages the fraternity of CII as a whole. With this, I request our Vice Chairman, Mr. Deepak, to kindly give a vote of thanks for this August gathering. Mr. Deepak.
Thank you, Chairman.
Manishji, I will like to leave before my flight, so I will thank Deepak.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Yes, Mr. Deepak, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, all. On behalf of CII and on my personal behalf, I would like to thank all the dignitaries and participants at the second edition of CII Northern Region Virtual Conference on Telemedicine. By enabling access to quality healthcare with a near zero contagion risk, telehealth and telemedicine has witnessed accelerated adoption during the COVID-19 pandemic, finding its niche among the emerging digitally enabled India. Growing at a CAGR of somewhere around 39.6%, the telehealth segment, the telehealth market encompasses telemedicine, tele-ICUs, online pharmacies, mobile health, home diagnostic services, etc., and is the fastest growing segment as of now within healthcare. According to a recent study, the market is expected to reach at 10.6 billion by 2025. With the telemedicine practice guidelines published by the government on March 25th, 2020, thus legalizing the whole practice. The market has increasingly focusing on providing quality service at reduced costs and more convenience, helping India leapfrog from a provider-centric, volume-based model to a patient-centric, value-based model. There are few challenges as well. We always, the first challenge, which is navigating technology incompatibilities while ensuring the correctness of the patient data. It is a key challenge, including system security. And the second one is digitization of health records with mobile applications that can read data across the devices, pose data security challenges and that demand attention. And the third one is telehealth being a virtual health delivery system, inherently pose a risk of dual way information misinterpretation between the care provider and the patient. The post-pandemic era is likely to witness a significant increase, what we could see in digitized healthcare that need nourishment with solid governance and acceptable quality, safety monitoring, and confidentiality. These are imperative to scale up adoption of these services. With these words, I thank Shri Ravinderji, who is just left, for his flight, Secretary Health of Uttar Pradesh, for joining us. Thank you, sir. I also thank my colleagues from CII and fellow panel members. I would like to thank our sponsors for the event, without whom the event could not have been possible. Event partner TMT Law Practices, silver sponsor Teleradiology Solutions, supporting partner association SATI, SATHI. With these words, we would now start our next session, which is on digital health. There is a panel discussion, digital health shaping the future of healthcare, and the session would be chaired by Mr. Manik Rajendran, who is founder of IMMI Live, and their distinguished panelists would be Mr. Abhishek Malhotra, who is managing partner TMT Law Practice, Mr. Dhruv Joshi, Mr. Ganapati, Mr. Dr. P.K. Khosla, Mr. Manish Ranjan, Dr. Shashi Bhushan Gogia. And there would be another session, another panel discussion, which is would be focused on changing scene in digital health. And the session would be chaired by Dr. G.D. Puri, who is Dean Academics, PGIMER Chandigarh. And the distinguished panelist would be Dr. S.P.S. Garewal, who is CEO of Garewal Eye Institute and immediate past chair of CII Chandigarh Council as well. Mr. Kishore Joshi, Dr. T. Santhil, Dr. Manoj Kar. Now, with these words, now I hand over the session to Ms. Deepti Sharma to take over the proceedings further. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
A very warm welcome to all the esteemed panelists. May I please welcome our chair, Digital Health Shaping the Future of Healthcare. The session chair is headed by Mr. Manik Rajendran, founder of IMMI Life. The panelists we have today are Dr. Dhruv Joshi, Director, Cloud Physician Healthcare Private Limited, Dr. K. Ganpati, Director, Apollo Telemedicine Networking Foundation, Mr. Abhishek Malhotra, Managing Partner, TMT Law Practice, Dr. P.K. Khosla, Director, CDAC, Mr. Manish Ranjan, co-founder and CEO, Nano Health, and Dr. Shashi Bhushan Gogia, President, SATI. May I please take a minute to introduce our esteemed panelists for today. Mr. Manik Ranjan. He is the founder of IMMI Life, a heart attack advisory company saving lives of common person when faced with an imminent danger of losing life due to heart attack. The company has saved over 400 lives and advised about 10,000 cardiac patients. With over 27 years of experience variously as entrepreneur and subject matter expert, Mr. Rajendran has worked in India and USA to bring a holistic perspective to business and to nurture and create innovative approaches to healthcare in India. He has served as a co-chairman of the interoperability Tiger team set up to advise the Obama administration on meaningful use and stimulus guidelines. He also co-created and managed the prestigious interoperability showcase at HIMSS conference for several years, thereby being a major influence among the others. May I please welcome Mr. Abhishek Malhotra. He is the founding partner of TMT Law Practice. He has 2 decades of experience and is member of both the state bars of California, USA, and Delhi, India. His primary areas of expertise are intellectual property, commercial dispute resolution, and the subject areas of technology, media, and telecommunication. He has advised clients in minimizing legal risk and devising strategies for safeguarding against criminal and civil liability. His specific expertise include prosecution, defense of suits, proceedings and appeals in respect of infringement of intellectual property rights, as well as commercial litigation concerning employment, information technology, and competition issues. Mr. Malhotra has provided inputs to the GOI on issue of copyright, data privacy, satellite communication, etc. He's also a guest lecturer at the Indian Institute of Information Technology. We welcome you, sir. Next, may I please welcome Mr. Dhruv Joshi. He is the co-founder and CEO of Cloud Physician, a healthcare technology company that remotely provides ICU expertise to hospitals that do not have access to ICU specialist doctors. Dr. Joshi has a keen interest in the improvement of quality of care delivery. He has extensive experience with healthcare technology platforms across the world and has accumulated over 10,000 hours of providing remote critical care across USA and India. Dr. Joshi trained in pulmonary and critical care at the Cleveland Clinic Foundation, USA. He graduated medical school from St. John's Medical College, Bangalore. Welcome, sir. Next, we have Dr. K. Ganpati, and he is the past president of the Telemedicine Society of India, former secretary and past president of Neurological Society of India, former secretary of the Australasian Society of Neurological Surgery, past president of the Indian Society of Stereotactic and Functional Neurosurgery, former adjunct professor at the IIT Madras and Anna University. He is currently Honorary Distinguished Professor at Dr. MGR, Tamil Nadu Medical University, Chennai. Dr. Ganpati was formerly Honorary Consultant and Advisor in the Neurosurgery and Armed Forces Medical Services. In 1990, he became the first in South Asia to get a PhD in neuroimaging. A pioneer in introducing telemedicine in India, Dr. Ganpati has been working relentlessly from 1999 for the growth and development of telemedicine in India. Welcome, sir. Next, we have Dr. P.K. Khosla. He passed MTech in Electronics and Communication from National Institute of Technology, then REC Kurukshetra. He joined DRDO in 1986 as Scientist B. He is the founder of Embedded Systems Division of TBRL and remained its head for 5.5 years. The embedded products developed by him and his team has been successfully inducted into board systems of missiles and aircrafts. He became Group Director of Railtrack Rockets Shell National Test Facility in 2009. In yet another project, he has been developing techniques for evaluation of ejection seat for fighter aircraft. He was project director of the project with a sanctioned cost of rupees 64 crores. Welcome, sir. Next, may I please welcome Mr. Manish Ranjan. He is the co-founder and CEO of NanoHealth, an organization that is dedicated to provide integrated health management solutions at scale. NanoHealth works actively with large corporate and governments to provide proactive, coordinated, and continuous healthcare, avoiding numerous premature deaths. NanoHealth won the prestigious HULT Prize in 2014. Mr. Ranjan founded NanoHealth while he was pursuing his MBA from Indian School of Business, ISB, where he was awarded the Torchbearer title for outstanding leadership. Prior to his MBA, he worked as a consultant with the leading supply chain firm, I2 Technologies, presently JDA, where he designed business process aimed at driving efficiency and profitability for large multinational firms. Welcome, sir. May I please welcome Dr. Sashi Bhushan Gogia. He is the president of Sathi, SATHI, is currently running telemedicine projects in Nepal, Northeast, Maharashtra, Goa for ophthalmology and limb care. He is member of Bureau of Indian Standards MHD 17 Task Force on Development of Healthcare, Informatics Standards, Chairperson of Telehealth Working Group of International Medical Informatics Association and President of APAMI Asia Specific Association for Medical Informatics. He is an MBA, MBBS and MS General Surgery from AIIMS New Delhi. He has made an EMR software for use in clinics and hospitals. Over 150 users have been using it. Also made a machine and treatment protocols for filariasis and lymphedema to benefit of millions of patients. Dr. Gogia is also the editor of the book Fundamentals of Telemedicine and Telehealth. Welcome all the panelists. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Deepthi. Thank you very much for that introduction. Our distinguished panelists deserve all of the attention that you just gave, and we are here to listen to all of them. Today's theme of this entire conference is about health digital technology. And we are just days away from our Prime Minister declaring the new NDHM. So right in our lifetime, we have seen great advances in almost every field, more so in the world of digital technology, digital anything for that matter. Some of the best technological advances have been in healthcare for several decades in the form of devices and processes. The pandemic has now fast-forwarded several pipeline projects, and the future is here right now. It is a given. It's not a matter of if or when, not even a question of which part of the world. Right now, every one of us has been co-opted into contributing to what our digital health is going to be like. So the topic for this panel is therefore very much relevant at this point. And the topic is, for this panel, digital health shaping the future of healthcare. So what is digital health? Digital health comprises emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, smartphones, wearable devices, Internet of Things, Internet of Medical Things, and a lot more. And there is ample evidence that all of those have the potential to be used in care settings with very specific tasks. For example, AI is increasingly being used in diagnostic testing, even as wearables are creating behavior changes in humans. Still, there are large gaps in the evidence base, and buy-in from all stakeholders are not guaranteed. We all have to work towards that. So we are in a totally new paradigm, newer techniques for evaluation of what will find good use, what will fit in what kind of scenario. All of these are being evaluated at this point, and support tools during implementation are being invented even as we speak. So today in this panel, we have 6 panelists who all are very unique in how they are approaching digital health in their day jobs. They will each talk on specific themes, and we will end with the question and answer portion towards the end. But even during each one's talk, they will surely spark our imagination, and questions might arise. So please feel free to log in into the question and answer the chat screen, and we will address them as best as we can within the 75 minutes that we have been given. So to start it off, today we have Dr. Ganapathy. He's a doyen of telemedicine in India. Not only has he been involved right from the beginning a little over 2 decades ago, he has had a wonderful perch to view from about what is going on in the country. And he's certified as a neurosurgeon, but he has spent most of his time in telehealth, and he has a pragmatic view of the future. Dr. Ganapathy, may I invite you to share your perspective, please? Dr. Ganapathy? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, is Dr. Ganapathy there? I know he was there.
Yes, sir. Just 1 minute, we are checking.
I think I can't see him.
You can't see in the list.
Yeah, he may have dropped out.
Okay, all right. So we will get back to him when he gets on. In the meantime, what has happened in the healthcare as we see at this point is there are huge scope for integrated approach. And one of the approaches that is very needed is the critical care setting. And today we have Dr. Dhruv Joshi. He knows it best with his experience of handling over 40 hospitals and in other care settings. So, Dr. Dhruv, how do you see the future and what you are doing right now at this point?
Thank you, Manik, and thank you for inviting me to this esteemed panel. It's a pleasure to be here. I think just from just a little bit about my background, I am a trained intensivist or an ICU specialist doctor myself. I've worked in the ICU setting both in the United States as well as India. And one thing that has become clear both in the United States and India and perhaps everywhere in between as well is that in the critical care space, we simply do not have the number of specialist doctors or intensivists that we need to be able to address our population at large. Now, this has been a long-standing problem, and as we think about solutions to address this problem, the traditional modes of solving this problem of training an intensivist and deploying them everywhere they need to be is simply not a sustainable solution for us and not something that we're going to be able to attain anytime in the near future or perhaps even in the distant future. Again, just as an example, it took me about over a decade of training to become an intensive care doctor. And the fact of the matter is that over 90% of our hospitals in India today do not have the level of expertise in intensive care that they need to be able to provide their patients the appropriate care. Now, what happens to these patients? They either get suboptimal care or they are asked to go to other centers that have access to intensivists that may be another hospital in the same town, maybe a different town, maybe a different state very often, right? And in the critical care setting where time is of the essence, this is not a realistic possibility, again, in the interest of patients' health. As such, technology is the way that we can address this problem in a sustainable manner. Using technology to connect hospital ICUs to ICU specialist doctors so that they can be involved in their care as and when needed, whenever they're needed, is what is going to meaningfully impact outcomes of these patients. And so it is with that sort of background that I got into the space, realizing that there was a huge unmet need for intensivists across India that we got into the space of addressing this need and leveraging technology to do that. Because like I said, as we think about it, if you just think about the scale of the problem where 90% of hospitals don't have access to intensivists, the only meaningful way to get that access is going to be by means of technology. With connectivity, with the development of technology over the last 2 decades, we are now at a position where we can actually get patients the care that they need in the critical care setting using tele-ICU, which is connecting intensivists to patients wherever they may be located. And again, as you think about solving this problem at scale, what tele-ICUs allows you to do is, number one, allows you to sort of digitize the management of patients, thereby improving the accountability, reducing errors, and also, very importantly, improving the efficiency and productivity of doctors, right? So when you sort of, we've all heard about the statistics where you have this doctor to patient ratio, and very often we compare it to Western European countries, and we're never going to attain the similar doctor patient ratios as a Western European country, right? Where our population is much larger. And so the question comes down to, do we need to attain those type of ratios? And the answer that I would submit is perhaps not. Maybe we can deliver the same quality of care and attain the same outcomes for patients without necessarily having to attain those doctor-patient ratios as we see in much smaller and more developed countries. And again, that can only be made possible by leveraging technology, by connecting, providing access to people with high quality care, using technology platforms, using data science, improving the ability of doctors to take care of a larger number of patients. Just to give you an example, in the setting where I would go to a hospital and take care of patients in an ICU. Typically in a day, I'd see 10 to 12, maybe 15 patients on a busy day. And using technology platforms, using tele ICU platforms that we're using currently, we're taking care of one intensivist is taking care of 40 to 50 patients a day, right? So you just increase the capacity of your intensivist almost fourfold, and the potential to increase it significantly higher exists. The more data that you get in, the more intelligence that you build into your platforms, the more structured workflows that you create is going to allow this productivity to be further enhanced, and for us to sort of leverage to leverage the power of technology to address that gap of access to quality expertise for patients. So I think that's the future that I see. I will, however, a word of caution here, just to everyone listening, that in healthcare delivery is complex. It has a lot of touch points, and it involves a lot of change to take place. It is fairly entrenched in the way that it currently operates, and it requires a fair amount of change to take place if technology were to attain the adoption that we want it to. And for that to happen, we must realize that while technology may be the layer on which we operate, it's still a lot of is very heavy on interpersonal interactions, whether it's doctor to doctor, doctor to patient, doctor to patient's family. All of these are core to healthcare delivery and core to the patient experience, core to the provider experience, core to the patient family experience. Very often in ICUs, in critical care settings, very often we interact with family members. And so it's very important to build technology solutions keeping that in mind. There's going to be a need for change management. There's going to be a need for upskilling of training, not just from a clinical standpoint, but perhaps even from an operational standpoint. And bringing all stakeholders on board if we are actually going to look at meaningful adoption and meaningful scale for some of these technology solutions. So while on paper the 13,000-foot view would be like, yes, technology is the answer, let us realize that there is a lot of people management that needs to go in to allow for that technology to be used in the right manner. And I think that's where we have found, a lot of people have perhaps fallen short, and we often question why hasn't, telemedicine been adopted as much as it should. Certainly, we're seeing the adoption improve significantly in the last 1.5 years since COVID has been upon us. But nonetheless, I think it's very important to keep this in mind that we're talking about doctors, patients, nurses, we're talking about patients' families, and enhancing the experience for all of these is essential for any meaningful adoption to take place.
Thank you, Dr. Dhruv. Actually, you have opened up a whole bunch of questions now, and I will reserve it for the end of the session. But at this point, you have given a good understanding of the bigger picture, like you said, at the 30,000-foot level. I'd like to get back to Dr. Ganapathy, who we lost just for a few minutes there. He, as I said, he's a doyen of telemedicine, and he can give us a perspective from the point of view of a practitioner, and as he has been on telemedicine itself for a long time. Dr. Ganapathy, your perspective.
Thank you, Manik, and thank the CII for organizing this session. I belong to the BC era. I'm not talking of before COVID, I'm talking of before computers. I was probably the last batch of surgeons in this country who were trained when computers were not even in existence in a hospital setting. There was no CT scan in India at that time. Obviously, I'm a technology buff, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I love technology, I embrace technology. However, I very strongly feel, based on my personal experience of almost 5 decades, that technology is only a means to achieve an end and not an end by itself. Hundreds and hundreds of conferences, awareness programs have been held on telemedicine. We always talk about technology. We are fascinated by 5G. I started telemedicine with 64 kbps Today, I have 180 Mbps in my room, and we are very shortly will be getting 400, 500 Mbps. So we are talking of smartphones, we're talking of 55-inch screens, and so on and so forth. But what I wish to convey in the next couple of minutes is ultimately we continue to be a healthcare provider. I would like to think of myself as a doctor first, as a doctor second, and a doctor last. Lars Lexer, the inventor of the Gamma knife, which at that time was the world's most sophisticated technology in healthcare, he said, I quote, "A fool with a tool is still a fool." It's a man behind the machine that counts. The beneficiary, I don't like to call him the patient, I would like to call him the beneficiary, because I believe in the years to come, a doctor is not going to spend his time making a diagnosis and treating something which could have been totally prevented. We are talking of promoting wellness the e-way. We are talking about making people healthy. And for this to happen, you need to empathize. You need to sympathize with the patient. It is possible to practice tender loving care virtually. It is possible to wipe the tears of a sick patient several thousand miles away. See, we need to get into the mind of the beneficiary. What is it that he wants? Patients don't care how much you know. They're not at all interested in the detailed technology of stenting. You may be able to do a fetal surgery in the unborn, but what they want to know is how much you care for them. We need to empathize with them. We need to sympathize with them. I'm afraid we're slowly getting into the area of depersonalization of medicine, dehumanization of medicine. I have seen doctors themselves, patients, engineers, chartered accountants, IAS officers, generals in the armed forces. At the end of the day, they want a commiserating physician. You just cannot tell through the internet. You cannot tell a guy, hey, you require a double lung transplant because both your lungs are badly affected. It is much more than that. And I am confident that in my own lifetime, I will be able to see haptic sensation being actually implemented. Today, cyber gloves are being used in an experimental clinical trials, but I'm sure in the next few years, I will be able to put my hand on a multinodular goiter and find out at least whether it is cystic or calcified or ossified, etc. In other words, technology, there's no limit to technology, but at the same time, we must understand that technology is only a means to achieve an end. So what would be my take-home message in the next 2-3 minutes? My teachers were not only erudite, they were not only skilled technicians, they were not only knowledgeable people. I'm talking of the 70s and 80s, Madras Medical College, which was at that time one of the best colleges in the country. They were well known for their bedside manners. The patients would line up just to get the experience their bedside manners. Today, I believe that bedside manners should be replaced by what is now called webside manners, WEBSIDE. This is equally important. We take teleconsultation too frivolously. We don't give it importance enough. It is essential that the doctor be dressed appropriately. It is essential that there is good lighting. It is essential there's no background noise, etc., as you would do in a regular consultation room. And I believe that we are being overwhelmed by EMR, hospital information systems. Yes, these are all important. It is necessary to document every data. But I would think that today we have nurses, physician assistants, people who will do all this. Dr. Manik, you mentioned about AI. Yes. Today, an AI can reduce the differential diagnosis from 10 different conditions to one of 2 or 3. A diabetic retinopathy, a fundus examination, my AI system gives annotations and tell me for this, and this reason, I think it's a diabetic retinopathy. Therefore, I have more time. Contrary to a popular perception, technology enables me to have more time to listen to a patient. Sir William Osler, 160 years ago, said, I quote, listen, listen, listen. He is telling you the diagnosis. I think this is the most important thing in telemedicine. The doctor should be told to listen, listen, find out what the beneficiary wants. You don't just go on talking about stenting or heart transplant or brain transplant, but find out what the family wants. Do not treat an image on a CT scan. Do not even treat the human being, treat the family who one of whose members has got a raised HbA1c. Unless you adopt this attitude, you will not create that wow effect. And I very strongly believe that in spite of the government now taking a major initiative in promoting telehealth, if you want an exponential transformation, not an incremental release. Of course, in the last few years, a strand of RNA has acted as a global CTO, a global chief transformation officer, necessity induced. But if you want people to embrace telehealth, you must produce the wow effect. The ambassador for telehealth is not the Telemedicine Society of India, is not CII, not the doctor community, but the beneficiaries. Every beneficiary after a 10-minute consultation should say, my God, I never even realized the doctor was 2,000 miles away. And I think this is what needs to be emphasized. I could go on and on, but I think I will stop here and take any questions later on. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Dr. Ganapati. That was an indeed new phrase that we learned today, bedside to website. I think it adequately explains the nature of the problems that the future really is looking at. It's not about technology. It's not about, like you said, all the other stakeholders. It's about the beneficiary. And Dr. Dhruv also outlined a very busy part of the hospital care. So at the other end, with the beneficiary community or people with no illness who are actually well, care coordination is a major task. And that's precisely what our next speaker, Mr. Manish Ranjan's company does. Manish, what kind of scope and future do you see in your area of expertise, which is care coordination?
Thanks, Manik. I mean, it's a privilege to be going after such, coveted doctors and who've done some amazing work in their areas. So, I mean, I'm an engineer, and I look at it, the healthcare from a completely different eyes, and the closest relationship I have is that my dad is a doctor, and I studied at healthcare at Indian School of Business. So when I looked at it, when I was trying to understand the health systems, then I saw there are two major problems. One was it was reactive, and the other that it was very fragmented. So when I say reactive, it means that if I need, if I'm very sick, and I'm put in ICU, then I'm sure all the problems that Dr. Dhruv mentioned, and that can actually help. But what can I do to actually prevent people from going there, right? I mean, for all, and there are, and when we started looking at it, there a lot can be done, and especially for the diseases, long-term diseases like diabetes, hypertension, which leads to many issues. And the numbers which I quote is at the peak of wave 2 in the country, there was 5,500 people who died in a day. And even today, more than 8,000 people die out of heart-related ailments every day in the country. So the numbers are staggering, and many of these can be actually prevented. So why is it actually happening? So at first, the identification of these diseases are late. So what can be done to actually identify them early? Even if they are identified, the diagnosis by the doctor is late, because it's not always easy to find the right doctor for the people we're talking about. And then even if for many of these diseases, even if the diagnosis is there, even if the prescription is there, the follow-up is poor and bad. I mean, it appears to be that it's only for so not to for poor people who are who do not have access, but actually having seen, we have enough data, this is across the board. Even the best of the people, if there are no symptoms, we don't act on it. So we do almost always we seek care, and basically that's what we are able to provide. We are getting sick care and not healthcare. So we realize that the changes has to be done at both ends. I mean, both from the provider side and from the patient side. So what changes? So first was we said that, okay, can we start creating these intelligent nudges for the people on both on the provider and the patient side, so that the right care can be provided at the right time. And we realized that there was hardly any health-related data to be able to do that. So that's when we started our journey with the complete digitization of the healthcare, right from a simple lab results to prescription to so pretty all kind of health data which is there. We started digitizing them, and then we'll okay, it's great, but so what? That was already happening in the developed countries, and still the challenges of care coordination remained over there. So that's where we built a recommendation engine on top of it, which for every activity it kept telling that what next should happen and when it should happen and who should be doing it, and that we realize actually makes a real impact. Because then it becomes in some way a line item in the calendar, and which for both for the patient and for the provider. So even if the patient misses it for some reason, because it may not be a top urgent thing, even the provider kind of reminds and gets it done. And then looking at it, the whole thing from 10,000 feet level, we saw that okay, how can we make the entire flow seamless? So we started with a basic screening that which can be a web-based, paper-based. I mean, different people say different things, HRAs, but based on that we can actually risk profile, and then we can do a confirmatory lab test. So not everyone has to even go for mandatory tests that we do right now, because right now the approach is very generic again across the board. And once the confirmatory test comes, that is when the doctors can actually go ahead and diagnose and then put the diagnosis of this patient is hypertensive, has high cholesterol, and maybe other thyroid disorders and other things. And once confirmed, that's when the disease management protocol has to be initiated for the next 6 months, 12 months, where people close monitoring is done to ensure that the right care, the right set of team is coming and providing the care at the right time. So and it basically completely changes the whole approach. Like right now, the provider is waiting for the patient to come, but now it makes the whole thing on that we are actually inviting the patient that hey, this is the right time when you this is the care you need, and then that will ensure that your quality of life and health is maintained for a much longer time. This makes the entire health system very efficient. Health improves because now you're absolutely completely proactive about your health, and cost reduces because now a lot of thing can be done by GPs. The specialists go in and provide care for actually the very complicated cases, the comorbidities, and most of the common cases, because of there's a trend, there's a data, it can be actually managed by GPs. Overall, the cost of the health system reduces significantly. And the way I see it is like, if someone is hypertensive, even if he knows, I mean, he or she has no reason to actually take a step right or left extra than his normal life to actually go ahead and treat it, because I mean, he or she just doesn't feel anything. And that is where apart from telemedicine has a great role to play, from the fact that apart from providing the care where there is no one, there is no doctor available, but also in cities where there's a lot of doctors available, but just for the sake of convenience. Because I mean, if I don't feel anything, if I don't feel a pain, I mean, it's very hard to imagine for someone to go ahead and wait for a few hours, take out few hours from a daily routine to treat or get something for which I don't feel a pain, or I don't so that's where the telemedicine also adds a lot of convenience, and that's which is very much required at this point of time. So again, I think as a future, I mean, this health system value chain is very long, and apart from this right from so-called preventive health or wellness to the ICU care, which Dr. Dhruv mentioned, I think there is telemedicine and other pieces have a great role to play. And we are definitely, I mean, as a country, what's happening at the center and the direction that has been given, we are well poised to actually make a difference in and show to the world that this can be done very well.
Thank you very much, Manish. I think it was a good picture of the care coordination that you gave us, and it is all possible because of the technology that we have. In fact, we all are aware that the pandemic has changed the world in many ways, and in the Indian context, we saw that the crisis bringing out the best in people. In fact, at the height of wave 2, between April and early June, we saw our clinical specialists, our doctors going back to the hospitals, along with technicians and staff. And then all over the place, you had volunteer groups that popped up from out of nowhere, and they were helping in getting the maybe a resource to
Various
be allocated.
resources.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And typically during the second wave, there were two kind of surges. One was the surge in infection, which was basically the nature of pandemic. Nothing can be done. Only thing that can be done is have vaccination, lockdowns, and those are government related ones. But there was also another surge. It was a surge in demand for resources. And resources could be someone saying, my father needs a ventilator, or someone saying, I need a oxygen bed. And so in our experience with EMI Live, we saw that digital technology really came to the rescue. What we did was as soon as a patient called in, we were able to reduce their anxiety level and panic level by using telenursing. So telenursing, basically nurses, a bank of nurses who would go ahead and do a complete triage of the patient. And so when we did the triage of the patient, we actually found out that the patient had not even left home to actually need a ventilator. Someone would have told, oh, your grandfather needs ventilator, but actually he probably just needed an oxygen concentrator. But
Absolutely.
What this goes to show is we can do a whole bunch of things. In fact, within a short period of time, almost all urban households today are able to get at least 6 devices in their home, starting from a thermometer to pulse oximeter to a scale to BP machine to a to blood sugar monitor. So there are 6 unique pieces of devices already in every home, where in the olden days we had only one. So digital technology really is there, it's up there. And in fact, even 2 years ago, I could not find and locate a nurse in Lucknow. Today, with the right kind of phrases on Google search, I can find a nurse in Lucknow in the middle of the night and have the nurse go and service one of our patients to give an IV injection. So home care monitoring patients can be taken care of, and home health care is where we are. And that is one of the futures, right? And
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for showing that up and having outlined coordinated care and a little bit about the telenursing that we had done. I now invite Dr. Gogia, who has been working very much on the remote patient monitoring, remote care monitoring for a very long time, and especially in the rural settings. So Dr. Gogia, what has been your experience, and how do you think this is shaping up, not just in the urban centers, but in rural areas as well?
Thank you, Manik. Thank you for bringing this up and inviting me to this. And thanks CII for making Sathi one of the partners. This is actually Sathi's activities I'll be talking about. And I think Dipti is supposed to allow me access to my screen, allow all of you access to my screen rather. So, Dipti, how do we go around?
Sir, I'll pass the presenter rights to you. 1 minute, sir.
Okay, so basically, I mean, this is actually, very well conducted, Manik, because you are making the flow very, very smooth. And this is a natural progression to what you and Mary said. Basically, what we are trying to do while the screen comes up, I'll just give a brief introduction. What we believe is that finally, healthcare has to be physical, and definitely Dr. Ganapati pointed it out. It's the tele is the enabler. It is not the prima donna that everybody tries to say that if you have tele, you have everything. You don't. Finally, the care is like you said, giving an IV drip or this thing. But when we are doing that, unfortunately, a sort of a dichotomy has erupted within our sense. We have various classes of or a hierarchy of healthcare providers from a doctor, and below everybody wants the doctor to do everything. There's a huge human resource available each and every place to do the actual things which are required, the procedures, taking a BP, doing a dressing, putting an IV, which is being done so far by a group of people who are health workers but not doctors. And how tele can bring that up, make that into an available result. Do you have the presenter rights? Can I start presenting? Share, yeah, I got it. So Let's see. This is the one. I hope. Yeah. I hope this is the right one I'm opening.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So I'll just start the share. Start the slideshow. Just a few slides, which, basically, I will tell you what Sathi actually does, short for Society for Administration of Telemedicine and Healthcare Informatics, which has been doing telemedicine right from 2004. We do projects in trying to improve healthcare using tele or whatever form of technology in remote and rural areas and also at other places. So we have a particular way of doing a project. First, we assess, look at the problem area, local partners and all that. Then we implement by ordering necessary equipment and technology, installation training, test sessions with hand-holding. Then you maintain, troubleshoot, do retraining as required, document, report, and then hand over to the local partner. We do independent evaluations and also package modules, create modules for next disaster. And COVID has been one of them where we have shown that it has occurred. Of course, Manik is now a Sathi member also, and he's doing it on his own, also wonderful work with his telenursing. And we try to publicize whatever we do in scientific, and many of our work has been publicized already. So I'll just run through 3 projects that we did. First was after the tsunami, and we all know that in the Tamil Nadu, at least, the management by the Tamil Nadu was excellent. Even intermediate was also excellent, but the long term in the form of alcoholism, post-traumatic stress disorder, and panic reactions were rampantly present during that time. So we did the same project that I showed you in the first slide. We did a needs assessment. What is the problem? We found PTSD very, very important. Also, it was reported that after any disaster, it's true of even now, 80% of the people will get fear and certain mental problems because of the disaster. But over a period of time, it whittles down to 4 to 5%. And identifying these 4 to 5% who are going to get PTSD is the real key, which takes time. It requires regular checkups, which cannot be done by a person who comes from outside to give us this thing and then goes back. So we went there with the idea that tele may possibly help. We found panic reaction, we found alcoholism, and then we looked around, looked at the existing health system, what has been done, what is missing, looked at local partners, NGOs who could do that. We did advocacy and orientation with the partners who had workers, volunteers who could be trained. We did their training after installing the system, tests and streamlining, created timetable of how tele will take place, feedback and all that. And excellent results. We prevented a few suicides in a small area. I mean, we were very small at that time, almost unknown. And SCARF, which was a partner, helped us, which is based in Chennai, and they're still continuing the work that we started. They used to previously put Sathi as one of their partners and help them. Now they don't even need to do that, and they're doing a lot of telehealth. So this is a doctor at SCARF, and these are the voluntary workers at, I think it is Karaikal, who did the treatment, and of course we had to look at language problem. Another project in Mizoram, we in 2011 to 15 we did the telecare project, in which we first of all, our basic thing was that travel for the eye surgery is normally you require 5 trips to the hospital to get a surgery done, and through tele, by doing that, creating a tier 1, tier 0, tier 3 process, in which what we are doing is we had local health workers who would go house to house, tell them that you can come to our remote center which is close to you. That visual care center would then have a trained ophthalmologist who could examine the eye, give classes later, take appointments for surgery, send the images across to the doctor. And with that, we could cut down the number of trips to almost 1. And what we're trying to say that these health workers are running the project on their own and they're just coordinating, ensuring that the non-purely medical care is done remotely. And this is some of the outcomes that we showed, that how the amount of money saved by looking at the people traveling. Within 18 months, the infrastructure cost was totally recovered, and after that, it is pure profit and return on investment that takes place. Similarly, we have a third project which we are currently going. We treat lymphedema in villages, and lymphedema care is a triangular sort of care in which most important is self-care. But the knowledge of how to do the self-care is required. We also require local health workers who can transmit that information to the people whom we train. And Specialist requires to do only 5 to 10%. He needs to sometimes prescribe antibiotic, sometimes to look for a complication and all that. And lymphedema and ulcers are chronic diseases which require day-to-day care almost on a daily basis. Most of it can be done remotely with online support and monitoring, and we have done it and we have shown the results. And in this next is a small video. If you have time, I'll just run it a little. This is the camp running in a thing. We did a camp, trained the local people, and after that, they are managing on their own, and we are publishing a paper how their results are almost as good as what I do at my clinic. I charge 50,000 to a lakh for a patient. There, the total charge cost of material was 2,500. Look at the amount of saving and let alone the cost of travel and coming to this thing. I don't want to spend time on this, but this is a video of the actual training being done and this thing. So, in summary, people in remote regions have to pay extra for health access. Telehealth can solve this, but processes need to be well tuned. Remember that the ultimate objective is care tele, which involves physical management. Tele can only have a supporting role. It overcomes problems related to access and time. Locally available human resources can and should be used. Further training can be imparted as per need. It will cut down the cost of care. Also, it will improve local jobs and reduce time off for relatives. This is the way India can really become a engine of development. We can improve our growth rate tremendously. Just remember to keep your eye on the bird, eye on the bird's eye, so that you can reach where you want. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Govia. That was good. Digital health has reached all the way up to the rural settings. And you're saying that what's available right now is taking care of such situations also. Thank you.
Right.
There is another concomitant challenge. I'm sorry, Doctor?
Yeah, sorry, I have to stop here. Sorry. Yeah.
There's another concomitant challenge that is of scaling. And so when it comes to solution implementation along with standards conformance, we have CDAC, Center for Development of, just a minute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry. Center for Development of Advanced Computing. We have Dr. Koshla, and Dr. Koshla, I think his personal theme would be how he can help the nation's healthcare resources scale up. And so how would you shape it up for the nation, Doctor? Doctor,
am I audible?
Yeah, yes, you are now.
Okay, thank you, Manik, and thank you, CII, for giving me this opportunity to be here. The biodata read here to put me out of place in this gathering. A bit of correction. That was the time when I was working as a scientist in DRDO, and now I'm heading CDAC Mohali with a strength of about 400 employees, and we are our core strength is in healthcare technologies. We have several AI-based solutions to our credit, including diagnosis of the fundus images, diagnosing the glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, hypertensive retinopathy, or even AI-based detection of pneumonia amongst the infants. And of course, our eSanjeevani solution, which has emerged as the India's largest solution after the onset of pandemic. Dr. Ganpati gave a wonderful perspective of a practitioner. I fully agree with him. For telehealth to become a success, that kind of trust in the patients has to be there. The practitioner, if he listens to the patient and if he can wipe the tears of the patient, that only can make it a success. I published a book on telehealth from Springer last year, which also strengthens this point. And now I wish to give you the technologist perspective of the work. As you heard about the practitioner's perspective, now to deliver the healthcare to the citizens, already a very large technology-driven system piloted by NDHM is taking shape. It will be a system of wheels within wheels. These wheels need to be well oiled and they need to coexist. Some of the subsystems are going to be something like personal health record management system, telemedicine, a registry of healthcare providers like doctors, nurses, paramedics, ASHA workers, a registry of facilities like hospitals, diagnostic centers, a registry of citizens with their own health IDs. Further, these subsystems with ownership of different entities will work in tandem so as to facilitate thousands of simultaneous consultations and diagnostic engagements. We at CII Mohali are piloting two of these most important subsystems of such a framework. One is the PHRMS, that's Personal Health Record Management System, and another one is Telemedicine. And let me share my experience related to these two aspects. A PHR will typically comprise of the prescriptions, health data, lab reports, treatment details, discharge summaries, wellness data, etc., and related to one episode or a set of episodes and across the organizations. We or our parents may not remember what immunization we have taken in the childhood, but PHRMS will. We may be on medication for diabetes or blood pressure or any other ailment. We may forget to take medicine, but PHRs won't. It'll remind us. A federated personal health record architecture is being promoted. There can be a government PHRMS, as is being done by the CII Mohali, or a private one, some of which will spring up in due course. PHR is like the money which can be stored in the bank. The ownership of PHR belongs to the citizen. An individual can choose the bank where the money would reside. A patient can choose whether to keep PHR in government preferred or a private PHRMS. The difference is that while the money is transferred from one entity to the another, the PHR is shared with the different entities as per the consent of the patient, and it can be withdrawn also. The consent is facilitated by the consent management framework. The PHR remains available to the patient, the owner, all the time. While the patient need not carry voluminous papers of health records with him, the doctor is able to take more informed decisions, thereby improving the quality of healthcare. And the insurance sector is going to be another major beneficiary of such a framework. The health system of government organized corporates, smaller hospitals, diagnostic centers, clinics will be the feeder of EMR of the patients to be stored in PHRMS, which will be as per the choice of the patient. PHRMS will provide a web and mobile app or API for viewing the records. 3 years ago, we did launch one PHRMS, although the adoption is fairly low, but we are going full throttle on this with a newer avatar. The second solution I mentioned was the telemedicine. Now, some of the salient features of the telemedicine solution that we have rolled out after the guidelines of Niti Aayog were rolled out in 25th of March 2020, that the patient to doctor consultation has become legal now. The largest telemedicine solution that we have rolled out in terms of consultations, geographic spread, users, and so on, it is called eSanjeevani. It is funded by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and it is developed by CII Mohali. There are going to be 155,000 HWCs, and by 2022, we are going to roll it out to all of these. There are two variants of eSanjeevani. One, doctor-to-doctor consultation. We call it eSanjeevani AB, the Arogya Bharati. Other one is the patient-to-doctor consultation, that is called eSanjeevani OPD. And for doctor-to-doctor consultation, a hub and spoke model has been followed, where the medical college or the district hospital being the hub and the HWCs being the spokes. The telemedicine solution named eSanjeevani is already adopted in 35 states in India. We are conducting more than 1 lakh consultations a day. 3 of the southern states, especially the Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and Karnataka, are the heaviest users. And ever since it was launched, after the onset of pandemic, 12.5 million consultations have already taken place. There are more than 400 specialty OPDs available through the eSanjeevani in different states. The residents of a state normally consult the doctors of their own state as provided by the state governments, and whole facility is free of cost. The challenges, some of the challenges which I have observed in the course of working on these two solutions. One is the challenge of reaching out to the unconnected, digitally illiterate, remote, hilly tribal areas. Literacy and awareness will be required so that the patient gives informed consent and the duration for which the data will be shared with the hospital. The internet penetration is a challenge in many areas still, but all we need is a 2 Mbps kind of a solution. And those would be available through BharatNet and the PM Vani. The adoption of technology part, the utilization of e-Sanjeevani and PHR in some states, despite availability of facilities for citizens, is not up to the mark. And some of the states have given ads, but whatever efforts they have been put are not successful until good number of residents start utilizing it. I feel the engagement at the grassroots level and the trust in the system, as was brought out by Dr. Ganpati also, will be the hallmark of it. The interoperability between different systems. Today, there are multiple IDs, there are data privacy challenges, there are security challenges, there are Indian equipment, imported equipment, and they all need to conform to a framework such as proposed by the NDHM. And if the interoperability improves, obviously this system would be a greater success. The audio video chat that we provide in this teleconsultation alone is not enough. There needs to be a point of need devices at the health and wellness centers, or maybe some more devices at the residence of a patient, like as common as maybe thermometer or a pulse oximeter or a BP apparatus, and so on. Now, efforts in entering the data needs to be automated to save doctors' time. Doctors are more accustomed to writing on paper than keying in the data. Maybe the medical transcription industry has the answer and could play a key role. The standardization of data is fundamental to artificial intelligence and business intelligence and the analytics. If not done, it can fail to give results. And this is a well-known fact. Also, mapping of diseases across health systems to a single code is a monumental task. As we understand it, the biggest challenge in the standardization of the disease code as per the international standards still exists. There are other entities that add to the PHR, labs, doctors, healthcare workers, pharmacists, and so on. We need to establish a fine balance between right to healthcare of a patient and the right to safety and security of a healthcare provider. The OTP challenges we ourselves observed, the ISPs, if the OTP doesn't get delivered, the doctors are not able to operate. Thousands of doctors sit idle and many patients are waiting for the consultation. First, just because the OTP is not available to them, it poses a challenge. If the health cloud is made available to the NDHM ecosystem for free, it will be a great fillip to the entire industry. Our experience of proliferation of telemedicine can be leveraged to roll out other applications such as e-pharmacy, AI to reduce the burden on health information providers. Methodical data collection will enable advanced analytics, usage of health biomarkers, and better preventive healthcare. The complexity of languages, of course, we are operating on two languages, one the local language, another is the English language. But again, getting onto the native languages is a challenge. The computerization of pharmacies is a challenge, and I can go on and on, but let me conclude here that from the healthcare perspective, the technology perspective, the teleconsultation ecosystem needs to be supported. The real fruits of today's efforts would be reaped perhaps in decades from now, but that too would happen only if we start today. Let's think big, start small, and scale fast. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khoshla. That's a good thought. Think small, begin now, and then think of the bigger future. Thank you very much. And of course, government plays a major role in shaping the future of any country. And today we have Mr. Abhishek Malhotra, who has worked very closely with the Government of India on the telemedicine practice guidelines. And the TPG, or the telemedicine practice guidelines, is the first step that the government played right in March of last year. They brought legislation in, and they ensured that what was prior to this, not legal, it was never termed as a legal or a not legal practice, but doctors shied away from telemedicine in spite of a lot of people being in telehealth itself. But March onwards, the world changed differently, and we have Mr. Abhishek, who's going to bring in the legal perspective and also add what is the potential for a cogent government strategy into healthcare and telemedicine. Mr. Abhishek.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, CII, for not only organizing this particular event, but also inviting me to speak here. Ideally, I think, while we do speak of this area as telemedicine, I prefer the slightly expanded aspect and the terminology which we have used, and Manik, you also used, telehealth. It's wider, it's a little more encompassing, and it gives it gives a better flavor of the entire thing. May I request the presenter to not share my credentials? I think let's have the concentration on what we are trying to speak about. Um, so, as the important part of the regulatory policy aspect of telehealth, and there were, I think, Manik, you also mentioned right now with regard to the guidelines, as also in the beginning, just before our event began, there was a reference that the guidelines that have come in have made telemedicine legal. And that's one aspect which, you clarified to a certain extent, and I'd just like to sort of put that in perspective, that telemedicine, or the practice of healthcare through the use of technology and telecommunications technology, has never been illegal. I mean, when I sometimes speak with people who I'm introducing this subject to, the first thing that I tell them, and when there is this question of whether or not it is legal, I say, look, haven't you ever heard your parents call up a doctor and ask them for a particular advice based upon the symptoms that they communicate to that doctor? You have. And it is a telecommunication network being used for the purposes of healthcare. So, A, it's never been illegal. B, one of the greatest initiatives taken by the government in the sector of telemedicine, and the guidelines have just come in last year, but ISRO has been using its satellite facility since 2001. For 20 years, they've been providing access to remote healthcare facilities in certain areas of the country, and that access continues to grow. I mean, it's just on the ISRO website, if you go and you will find out, and I'm reading from there, that presently that network covers 384 hospitals, with 60 specialty hospitals connected to 306 remote rural district medical college hospitals and 18 mobile telemedicine units. So the government has been playing a role for the last 20 years. Undoubtedly, there did prevail for a long period of time the uncertainty associated with this practice, because A, there is a question of liability, but that liability attaches even in the brick and mortar domain. That liability could get to a certain extent exacerbated in the digital domain, not because of the use of technology, but because of the lack of understanding, both perhaps to a certain extent at the registered medical practitioner's end, as well as the patient's end, and certainly at the end of entities that are tasked with enforcement of the laws in our country. So it's as a result of this miscommunication, this misunderstanding, that word had gone out into the community that telemedicine is illegal. Thankfully, that's the aspect of the past. With the notification of the telemedicine practice guidelines, I mean, they were put on the MOHW website in 23rd of March, but finally they were notified in the middle of May, and subsequently also adopted by Ayush and the other relevant stakeholders. The important part is that A, it is, while it has legal sanctity, it is not as rigid as a law, and thankfully so, because the time that these guidelines were notified was just when the pandemic had hit. It was to a certain extent a knee-jerk reaction, because we'd been working with the Niti Aayog for about 3 or 4 months, and perhaps the Telemedicine Society had been doing that much earlier. And it was a process where we were going through the nuanced aspects of what to include and what to leave out, how to incorporate practical experiences. And that discussion was ongoing when, of course, the pandemic hit. And I think that's the reason why this had to be notified, like, as of yesterday. Having gone through the experience of the implementation of these guidelines, I can possibly say, A, it's a great first step. It's a great first step because not only does it ensure that the right to healthcare, which has been recognized as part of the right to life by the Supreme Court, is in true senses implementable and accessible to people. More importantly, it's the right to quality healthcare, which is facilitated by telemedicine and telehealth sort of practices and technology. So in the last one or little over a year, 1.5 years since these guidelines have been around, we've seen that whereas the pre-guideline situation in terms of practical application permitted and facilitated the practice of telehealth on a much wider scale, these guidelines seem to, while providing a roadmap, seem to provide some amount of limitation to the practice. The clearly identified features of that, apply in the case of, let's say, the definition of what is a follow-up consult. So follow-up consult has been defined as a consult which is after the first one being a physical consult, which basically means that when you are applying the telemedicine practice guidelines and asking the directors to go in for the usage of technology in a follow-up consult, there has to have been a first consult being physical. There is no need for that limitation. And we've been talking to the stakeholders to try and see whether we can bring about an amendment. That has not happened yet, but I guess that's something that can be done. The second aspect is if the TPG guidelines contain a list of medicine that can be prescribed in certain circumstances. Now, while that list is supposed to be dynamic, however, it's not been updated. There has only been one amendment to these guidelines in the terms of inclusion of psychiatry, but otherwise there has been no amendment, and clearly speaking, it's required to be done sooner rather than later. The as I think one of the panelists had said, there is still this element of a taboo that operates both at the beneficiaries as well as the doctors sort of level as to whether or not to go in for the practice guide to go in for the telemedicine and telehealth usage of technology at all. And I think that's borne out by just lack of awareness and lack of education, and that's an ongoing effort that has to continue to be there, and perhaps government can play a much larger role. It's already envisaged in the guidelines that 3 years after the notification of these guidelines, this has to be included in the curriculum for the MBBS, and every doctor graduating must be trained in this. So I guess only over a period of time we will be able to get over that roadblock. One aspect which I guess the telemedicine practice guidelines could not cover, I mean, they just give a reference to it, that the general requirements of the law with regard to confidentiality and privacy need to be maintained. However, the guidelines stop short to identify specifically as to what those are. And to a certain extent, as I said, they're dynamic and they can possibly be supplemented in time. But a part of that problem is not to do with those guidelines. A part of the problem is the fact that we don't have an existing Data Protection Act in place, which could be the guiding factor to determine as to what the rights and obligations are, how you go about it. The Information Technology Act and guidelines released in 2011 do provide some sort of a roadmap, but I think that clarity is further required, which we're all hoping should come about in the next 1 year. And this is especially so because in terms of the recent announcements by the Prime Minister, not only is the NDHM is going to be implemented soon, but the e-rupee, the digital sort of tokenization of currency that is sought to be implemented in the country, the official digital tokenization, is going to be implemented first, as per that announcement, in the healthcare sector. So then the issues of privacy become even more important. So I think it's, as I said, I'm reiterating, it's a great first step. There needs to be greater amount of education. There needs to be greater amount of awareness. There needs to be training. And certainly there are those identified steps that I've mentioned to take things forward in right earnest and to achieve a lot of the goals, if not all, that have been identified by the panelists before me. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Wonderful. It's exciting to hear about e-rupee being applied in healthcare first. And I think that's a natural place for it to be. We are at the right time, at the right place. Healthcare will get such a boost with the digital technology that we have at this point. And so with what's going on with the government, with what's going on with the legislations, with what's going on with the various stakeholders, the future is definitely here. And the way it is being shaped up is by the demand from the beneficiary community, as Dr. Ganapathy had said. And we will get into the deeper aspects of critical care and coordination of care and all of that. And I think what we are looking at as a conclusion from this group is that we just need to be cognizant of the fact that each one of us is a stakeholder and we shape it up. It is not going to be happening in magic. It's already there. The magic is there. We just have to wield the right weapons and make it happen. And I think at this point, there are no questions to be answered at this in this panel. So looks like we have used all of our 75 minutes and usefully so. Thank you, panelists, each one of you. You've been very good. There will be more questions later on by people who view this. Oh, there are some questions. I'm sorry. Okay, let me just take 2 questions very quickly because I think, yes, Dr. Ganapathy, what constitutes the maximum demand on telehealth platform in terms of top 3 specialties?
This is a very difficult question to answer. Probably I cannot answer that question because it depends on so many variables. India is not one country. India is another planet, I would consider it. And also it depends on the enthusiasm of the teleconsultant. We still have not reached the stage of that. So, for example, I'll give you, we do about 10,000 teleconsultations a day. The Apollo group, of course, 90% of this is government public-private partnership. But if you look at our direct teleconsultation model, you'll be amazed to find that it is rheumatology and sexual medicine for the simple reason that our rheumatologists, sexual medicine, psychiatric teleconsultants are gung-ho about it. I mean, I've been able to transfer my enthusiasm to them, infectious and contagious. Cardiology, surprisingly, the cardiologists are just not too keen about doing it. So there are so many variables. Having said that, I would like to say that today there is not a single specialty or subspecialty which cannot benefit with telemedicine. Everything is contextual, and I'm very happy the telemedicine practice guidelines stresses on this word again and again. Everything is contextual. So today it may be specialty A, B, C, and D. The next month it may be Z, P, Q, R, S, T. So everything is variable. If you want me to force myself and give it, it is specialties which do not require a rectal examination, a vaginal examination, and things like that. Specialties which do not require mammography, MRI, brain, and ultrasound, etc. So, in other words, simple, non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, obesity, hypothyroid, endocrine, etc., where it's history, and you are able to give a diagnosis. So that is the ones where telehealth has a major role to play throughout the country. So for the moment, I would go back. Having said that, telemedicine, now, for example, in our own practice, 90% of the teleconsultations we give are for review cases. So I would still, though I'm an absolute enthusiast, I would still, like all my consultants, like to see the patient first physically, operate on them, for example, but post-operative, very, very rarely do you need to do a physical examination. I know I have not answered your question directly. It's not so simple as specialty A, B, C, and D, but I hope you get the idea.
Thank you. Thank you for answering Nitin Agarwal's question. Dr. Gogia, did you have a quick answer to this?
I have to just comment further. Very nicely stated by Dr. Ganapathy, but I will put it in a slightly different manner. Anything where time is of essence, you can't reach the person in time. Where you can transfer images, sounds, or some digital content to get the. So it's about transferring. If transfer is possible, rather than the person, you're saving time, you're saving money of travel. So at that place, it obviously comes in. And like you take a person with a cardiac, your own case, in what Inilife is doing. You do an ECG. If the ECG is showing that the person needs streptokinase, this is where it immediately has a role. So you can define the role according to the condition time as nicely as Dr. Ganapathy has to. That's all. I was just elaborating on that.
Manik, if I just forgot, probably getting old, Dermatology, of course, is the simplest with a 99.9% accuracy. Chances of making a mistake is almost zero if you have got the right history and the right photographs. And dermatology is the simplest. You don't need sophisticated, nothing you require.
Thank you very much. Nitin also has another question for Abhishek. Mr. Abhishek, how do you look at regulations in India for telehealth privacy requirements, similar to the HIPAA compliances in the US?
Yeah, so as I'd mentioned in the course of what I was, when I was presenting my sort of thoughts on this topic, whereas the guidelines do talk about the need for maintenance of privacy and confidentiality, which is consistent with the, the code of ethics that applies to medical practitioners. However, the specifications with regard to the emerging right of privacy and the context of that, consent, what data to be shared, how much to be shared, for what duration to be shared, all those aspects would be the subject matter of the PDP bill, which is a personal data protection bill, which is currently before Parliament and likely to be enacted. I mean, it was to be enacted last year, but it's been pushed for whatever reason. So once that comes about, we will actually have a more robust, system in place to be able to govern those questions, and then thereafter there will be a data protection authority that will actually possibly lay guidelines which is sector specific to enable the facilitation of sharing of this data and preservation and protection thereof.
Thank you, Abhishek. I think we have overrun our time by a few minutes, and I will stop with this and thank all the panelists and CII for setting this up, and hand it over back to Deepti. Thank you, Deepti.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for the insightful session.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, all the panelists. Now we will move to the next session. May I request all the delegates to stay with us till the end of the session and keep their questions ready in the chat box. So going forward, we will have the next session, Changing Scenes in Digital Health. And the session is chaired by Dr. G.D. Puri, Dean Academics, PGIMER, Chandigarh. So the panelists for this session are Dr. S.P.S. Garewal. He will be joining us in some time. He's caught up in some surgery. At the last moment, he just informed us. Mr. Kishore Joshi, Chief Business Officer, Teleradiology Solutions, Dr. Manoj Garg, co-founder My Upchar, Dr. T. Senthil, founder and CEO, Wellcare Health Systems. May I please take a minute to introduce our panelists for today for the session? Dr. G.D. Puri is presently Professor and Head, Dean Academic, PGIMER Chandigarh. He is a well-known cardiothoracic anesthesiologist in India and a fellow of the National Academy of Medical Sciences, NAMS, New Delhi, India, as well as a fellow of the Pulmonary Vascular Research Institute, PVRI, London. Dr. Puri designed first practical closed-loop anesthesia delivery system, CLADS, in the world, which has been patented in India and USA and has successfully undergone widespread testing in different medical institutions in India. Welcome, sir. Next, may I please call Dr. Tamilrasan Senthil. He is an ophthalmologist, healthcare entrepreneur with 15 years of experience in healthcare business. He is an innovative strategic thinker whose ideas have brought in eye care within the reach of common people. Dr. Senthil has extensive experience in running eye hospitals and charitable eye care foundation. He's frequently invited to present at many Indian and international conferences, including at Yale and Duke University in USA. He was honored with the Humanitarian Volunteer of the Year award at a healthcare convention held at Stanford University in 2007. In 2014, he was honored with a gold medal for his outstanding service. Welcome, sir. May I please call Mr. Kishore Joshi? He is a business leader with more than 2 decades of experience in life sciences and healthcare sector across globe. He has worked in various leadership level roles focused on business growth, international business operations, strategy during his stints with large corporates such as Fortis Hospital, Sankara Eye Care, and Associated Capsules Group. In his current role as CBO, Mr. Joshi spearheads the business operations for the TeleRed Group. In this capacity, he drives the strategy and growth, sales and marketing alliances, and technology partnerships for the TeleRed Group. Mr. Joshi is a postgraduate in pharmacy and management from University of Mumbai and Rutgers, USA, with leadership program from Wharton School of Business. Welcome, sir. May I please call next Mr. Dr. Manoj Garg. He's the co-founder of myupchar.com, the country's biggest online resources for health information in multiple Indian languages. Dr. Garg has a PhD in economics from Stanford University. He has previously worked at the Boston Consulting Group in San Francisco. While there, he focused on healthcare delivery in India for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Dr. Garg remains passionate about the potential of content and technology to deliver healthcare in every part of India. We welcome you here to the very special panel. Over to you, Dr. Bhuri, sir.
Thank you, Deepthi, for a nice introduction. We have in our panel today two doctors, and both the doctors are entrepreneurs also. Dr. Garewal as well as Dr. Tamilarsan Senthil, and both happens to be ophthalmologist. And we have Dr. Manoj Garg, who is a economist from Delhi School of Economics and who's done PhD from Stanford. He is his own startup of MyUpchar. Now, Dr. Garewal is an ophthalmologist from my own institute. He's not only an ophthalmologist, a photographer, an entrepreneur, and a computer professional. Before going to each one of my panelists to speak on this, their topic, I'll just try to briefly discuss what happened in the last session was how telemedicine can be exploited. Telemedicine, which has been on for last more than a century, starting with the teleradio consultations to teleradiology, starting from the mid of last year. And now we have one of our panelists, Mr. Kishore Joshi, who is also heading teleradiology solution, one of the major specialty in which the telemedicine or digital health is playing a role. In fact, as was rightly mentioned, wherever the images are, the pattern recognition of these images and putting an AI to make a diagnosis is a specialty which where this can be exploited beautifully and more efficiently. And the generation of all these need, as we say, the necessity is mother of all inventions. We were having telemedicine as was elicited in the last session for more than 2 decades, but still it was not exploited that much till COVID came, and that resulted in our exploitation of all the telemedicine facilities and all the technology. As it is said, technology can only enable, can only facilitate, it cannot replace a physician. It's only the deficiency of physicians, the remote situation of our patients, and the lack of facilities, and that the time delay which the shorter is the time delay between the onset of symptoms or onset of any medical issue and the diagnosis as well as the application of therapy. So technology can shorten this time delay. So with this background, I will just invite Dr. Senthil, who's an ophthalmologist, how he has exploited his capabilities in his and how the digital ecosystem is changing his practice, and how he has put this his facilities or his innovations for the best use of our community. So Dr. Senthil, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Govardhan. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity, and thanks to CII for giving us this opportunity to talk about the tele-ophthalmology activity which we have been doing over the last 6 years. So we were actually one of the movers in the tele-ophthalmology field, and the basic idea was I was a practicing ophthalmologist, but I always felt that there is so many huge number of patients who are not being able to reach the ophthalmologist. And then I thought technology is the only way to address the problem of one thing is economic issue, second thing is accessibility issue of the patients. And let us take the scenario of diabetes. So India has almost 80 million diabetic patients, and as you all know, diabetic retinopathy is one of the most common complication of diabetes, which might lead to blindness if not screened and identified at an early stage. So 80 million diabetics on one side, and then only 20,000 ophthalmologists on the other side. So it is practically impossible to connect the diabetes patients to the ophthalmologist on a physical model. Like, we cannot wait for all these patients to come to us. And so what I thought was, instead of waiting for the patients to come, just like teleradiology, why don't we get those images of the patients and do the reporting? So wherever the patients are going, like a diabetes center or a primary health center or a general hospital or even a pharmacy or a lab. So I thought of, is there a way to get the images of these patients and then use ophthalmologist in a remote manner to do the reporting for those images. So that was what we started doing. We started working together with diabetes centers. And one of the impediments to this process was that fundus cameras. So the cameras were very expensive initially when we started, but now a lot of innovations has happened in this camera field. So the cameras have come down very lower in cost, and so we put these cameras in these centers where the patients go, train patients, the technicians in those centers to take those images and upload. And the reports are seen by the ophthalmologist, and reporting is given within half an hour to these patients. So what we addressed was, one thing was, say 80% of the patients were still normal in these scenarios, and 20-25% had to visit ophthalmologist. So we saved the time, and when the diabetologist or the physician was referring these patients to ophthalmologist, because there was no symptoms in diabetic retinopathy, patients are not willing to go to the ophthalmologist. So for a screening, I think the mentality in India is people still don't want to get a screening kind of program or a prognostic this thing. So when that system was offered along in a diabetes center or in a physician's clinic, patients were more than willing to take up that, because they don't have to go and spend another day in an ophthalmologist. And whoever had these problems were then referred to the local ophthalmologist. So that was the model which we started, and I think we have been fairly successful. From the time we started, we have reached almost 1.5 million patients, and 300,000 patients plus have been referred to ophthalmologists identified with retinopathy. But still, there is a large gap. So still, there are 80 million patients who have to be screened every year. All these diabetic patients have to be seen by an ophthalmologist, or at least retinal images read by an ophthalmologist at least once in a year. So we feel this model can still evolve and reach out to a large number of patients. But only thing is, this has to become a government initiative, or the cameras have to come become still cheaper. So a lot of other support is also required to scale it up on a pan-India basis. Right now, we have scaled it up quite reasonably. We are present in almost 15 states now. So I think anybody else who wants to replicate this model should also try and replicate to reach out to more and more patients. Thank you, sir. I think.
Thank you, Dr. Senthil. Excellent. I think that's what in the last session it was being highlighted, that it is not the therapy, it's the prevention. And this is one good way of preventing. I mean, the point of contact is a diabetic being diagnosed and coming for treatment of diabetes or blood sugar control. If you can put your technology, which can minimize his unnecessarily going to a specialist and facilitate the early diagnosis of diabetic retinopathy, so that if there is an issue which can be addressed. I think this is the same logic which the wearable devices are being used, where you monitor the heart rate, blood pressure, limb movement, hearing, speech, and the way the person speaks, the way the person moves. You can diagnose a person much earlier than the frank deficit stage. So I think that's a very good application of digital this telemedicine or digital health, whatever you may call this. And thank you very much. If we have some questions, we'll ask you to answer that later on. Now we have with us Mr. Kishore Joshi, who is a CEO of, or the Chief Business Officer of Teleradiology Solutions. And I will request him to please tell about how the digital ecosystem has helped them in exploiting their capabilities. As I understand, the teleradiology was the first thing next to the teleradio consultations way back in 1950s, when the images were being transmitted through a telephone. And since then, it has been developing leaps and bounds. And now, as I understand, when the physician in the US is sleeping and the X-rays are being reported in India or maybe some other country. So this is wherever the expert is available, that's being used for assessing for making a diagnosis. So Mr. Joshi, please. We are not able to hear. Can you unmute yourself?
Sorry, am I audible now? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Puri, and thank you, CII, for the introductions and giving me the opportunity to be part of the panelist here. I did attend part of the morning session as well, and there have been some very excellent presentations and ideas. So continuing on those and what Dr. Senthil here mentioned, yes, teleradiology has been probably as one of the forefront, or one of the, I would say, kind of success stories for a telehealth deployment in the initial part, and kind of a flagship stories for telehealth or telemedicine. TRS as a company has been able to actually deploy this across the globe. And as Dr. Puri mentioned, of course, there are various telehealth or teleradiology works in multiple ways, where we take the opportunity where somebody time zone formats as well as requirement in terms of whatever is resources constrained areas. So teleradiology helps give services to both the areas where you can take advantage of certain time zones as well as be providing resources. So from our perspective, we felt that in the last 2 decades, where TRS has been extensively promoting teleradiology across in various parts of the world, I think one of the biggest challenges that it solves, or the problem it tries to solve, addresses the resources in terms of qualified physicians and radiologists. If we look at certain metrics which are there globally, I think the number of radiologists available as a percentage of the total population is just sheer very low numbers. So for example, in India is one radiologist per 100,000 people. So with those kind of numbers, it becomes important that the right resources are utilized correctly and they are able to reach out to the patients and the standard of care is done whatever is required to be done. So I think this tele definitely solves the problem of access. It also enables cost control because then you don't have to deploy multiple clinicians. If you are able to get the value out of the same clinician and he's able to utilize his bandwidth using technology to deliver those services. And the last part is you can also ensure that the quality is maintained. So there are three things which basically the tele part solves in terms of access, cost control, and ensuring a standard of care and the quality. But apart from that, what has helped us grow and what we're looking at eventually is as the times have changed, there's also a need, and technology has grown by leaps and bounds in the last 5 years. And artificial intelligence, people have been talking about AI in radiology was one of the first, I would say, adopters and a very early adopter of AI. So TRS was no different, and we also adopted some of the AI. So that allows us for more efficiency, prioritizing, and then we can also look at avenues and new ways by which patients' standard of care can be increased by looking at, say, for example, trauma cases. That currently in India, for example, there are no trauma tele-stroke programs, but some of the regions where we cater to, there are tele-stroke programs. So I think those are the opportunities which are waiting for even developing countries like India to promote those kind of centers and programs, which is enabled by technology and using artificial intelligence. The other aspect where TRS has been widely used and TRS has been able to provide services across has been the rural health setting as well. We work very closely with National Health Mission as well as a part of the teleradiology program in the Northeast states. And we have been successfully able to provide radiology services in the Northeast, especially the state of Tripura and Arunachal Pradesh as well. And some of the aspects of these were linked very closely to the technology which got evolved and also allows us to have digitization of even analog X-ray films and bring it back into a DICOM format, which enables the radiologists at our end or anywhere they are working to read those images and provide back the results in real time. I think these technological changes and marvels have really made on the ground things very different, and actually the standard of care definitely has improved. In the last I would say in the last 5 years, we probably had done more than 150,000 X-ray reads for a single small state like Tripura alone. So that has been quite substantial, and I would say this tele therefore provides an important platform for enabling and distributing the standard of care in a much effective way. I think the other part which is very important as a part, what it has helped us is we ourselves have also been focusing on how do we bring about efficiencies within the radiology system beyond only X-rays, which is a large requirement for most parts of the developing world. But today, TRS and with the acquisition and all of the CT, MRs and everything, all of these images can be acquired and reporting can be done for practically all modalities, including nuclear medicine as well. TRS has been able to do that, and a lot of radiology providers across the globe also provide that. So I think the platform has evolved over a period of time to allow for a multi-modality kind of reads, and that definitely is a boon for patients, as it means that the amount of time, wait times, and all of that definitely decreases. And one important aspect which we believe is that the remote radiology reporting helps the on-site radiologist become more effective because he is then able to cater to do much more work and leave the day-to-day reporting tasks and everything to a group of specialists and whom we can rely on. So I think there has been a mutual give and take and a model which this works. And in India, I think the teleradiology has worked in the last 5 years substantially. It has grown leaps and bounds, especially with the ministry also taking a keen interest and rolling out private-public partnerships in this area as well. So I believe there are much more opportunities beyond just the teleradiology, and the evolving opportunities could also be the telestroke programs, as we were mentioning. So there could be the value chain. We can rise up the value chain by providing tele 3D programs. For example, centers of excellence require transplantation and all of those. And so all of those can today be done using tele 3D models as well. We as a company have been providing it. Currently, the program is running for some of the prestigious institutes in the United States as well, who we cater to. So those are the advantages of growing up the value chain in the tele as well. And I believe there are opportunities within Indian context which companies like TRS and many others who have the expertise can bring in work very closely. We already work with partners such as NHM, and I think it is a good opportunity and a timeline, considering that COVID made us actually completely digitally savvy for most of the people. So I think as we move forward, tele health and teleradiology and all the telesystems and telediagnostics in general will become much more valuable.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi, for spelling out the opportunities available in the telehealth. I don't know what will the future in next 2 decades, whether there is going to be a word called telehealth, or it will just health will be the will be a conglomeration of a couple of things which tele will be part of that rather than taking it separate. Has Dr. Manoj Garg joined? Dr. Manoj Garg.
Yes, I'm here, Doctor.
Oh, thank you. Welcome. Dr. Manoj Garg. Now, once we have the ophthalmologist or clinicians trying to address the diagnostic issues, we still are left with huge population which may not be able to directly access the physician or the costly consultations through the whatever you say, medicine, radiology, or teleophthalmology. Then there is a need for us people like Dr. Manoj Garg and his startups to provide the immediate, quick information without the hesitation of the patient or the beneficiary asking those questions in public. So, Dr. Manoj Garg, will you like to explain what you are doing and how this current national digital health mission and that national or this changing digital ecosystem you can exploit for the improving the facilities to the beneficiary or the patient, whatever you may call that?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Puri. So, by way of quick introduction, MyOpchar is a health tech startup. We started 5 years ago. We providing medical information in Indian languages. Detailed, very authoritative, written by doctors or videos created by doctors, and it's all in Indian languages, which we distribute to our website, social media, our app, and whichever medium we can find. So what started happening was, it started this 5 years back. What started happening was people started asking us to connect them with the doctors. So most of our audience was coming from the smaller towns, which is where all our experience is from. So tier 2, 3, and beyond, right? So the demand is so big that today we reach about 50 million people every month. So that's quite substantial. So these are all people looking for medical information or looking to get connected with doctors. So we started connecting people with doctors through our platform. This is before the telemedicine practice guidelines had come around. So there was a lot of hesitancy from doctors as well on whether or not to teleconsult. So, I mean, we didn't call them consultations. Those were just advice sessions or group advice sessions that we used to host on our platform. Of course, with the telemedicine practice guidelines coming in, the hesitancy from the doctors has gone away. There is a wide acceptance of the methodology, and patients are always happy to use the medium as long as they could get to talk to a doctor, which they couldn't earlier, especially specialists, given where our audience comes from. So then with COVID and telemedicine practice guidelines, that part of our work just really zoomed. So we were at one point serving getting 1 million requests per month for teleconsultations, right? So just to give you an idea of how big the demand is. And we served it to the best of our abilities. But a couple of things that have happened since kind of these lockdowns have opened up is a lot of patients have ended back up in clinics where they could, where there wasn't an option, they still can't. And the second thing is people have become very, very comfortable with using technology, right? So everybody's been in a way forced to try out the methodology. So the standard marketing funnel is awareness, trial, adoption, advocacy. So right now we're at the stage where adoption is yet to happen in a large way. A big part of that is actually the ability and the means to pay. So while a lot of people will have smartphones, they may not yet have adopted digital payment methodologies, right? Or they may not have a credit card, or there might be hesitancy to pay the kind of fees that are charged by urban doctors. I'm not saying anything about the fees. It's just people who come from smaller towns, they're not used to paying these kinds of fees. In general, in India and healthcare also, there is well, actually anywhere in the world, there is hesitancy to pay for healthcare out of pocket, right? So typically there are third-party payer systems that have been set up, whether it's the government or insurance. So I think the big opportunity, so as far as teleconsultation is concerned, there is acceptance from patients, there is acceptance from doctors, the technology is there. Yes, you can always keep refining it. The rules can be refined a little bit more to improve the patient experience, to improve the medical outcomes. But the one big thing that I think still is missing is tying in some sort of insurance or some sort of third-party payer system which can allow this to really, really take off. So if you look at other countries where, let's say the US, Teladoc really took off, teleconsultations became a part of coverage of health insurance. So in India, typically health insurance will not cover OPD. It's largely targeted at IPD. So a lot of opportunities still exist. I think we are still on the ground floor as far as adoption of telemedicine or teleconsultation specifically is concerned. So yeah, very excited about what the future holds, and there are lots of solutions being tried out. We've also launched something, not to continue to advertise what we do, but we're also trying simpler payer systems, but a lot needs to be done there. That's it from me, Dr. Puri. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. I know that one of the issues which you have raised is the cost and how to facilitate the exchange of money between the user and the provider. So, but yes, if we can make it available in a situation like COVID, where the people are not able to move out of the house, and the doctors also don't want to meet the patient, then of course tele-advice is always welcome. And that's what, as a public sector hospital, we used to receive lots of calls. We used to, whether the patient should be shifted for ventilator, and we used to have remote consultations, asking the patient to wear the pulse oximeter on his finger, and then trying to ask him to put a photograph of that and WhatsApp that image, and then try to have a video if there's any doubt, and then giving consultations. But there is a lot of market, because I came to know that the corporate world, they exploited that for the benefit of the beneficiary, obviously. But the cost was huge. We were surprised to hear the cost of 5,000 rupees for a 15-minute consultation for a COVID, which may be just nothing, just a fear that patient is COVID positive and he is worried. He wants to consult a doctor. And sometimes it end up into unnecessary medication remotely, because the doctor will also try to, sometimes overdo, thinking that if I do not prescribe this medicine, which probably at the end of second wave, most of the medications which were introduced to the public have been withdrawn because there was no use. They were just being, a lot of things were advertised. And if the doctor doesn't prescribe those medicines, the patient will not feel happy after spending 5,000. And if he prescribes, then he becomes part of that. What should I say? I don't know. So I think those are the positive and the negative aspect of quick availability of consultation. The good part is if there's anything wrong, that can be detected in time. The bad part is your unnecessary medications because you have consulted a doctor. So with this, before I try to the question answer session, Dr. Garewal has Dr. Garewal joined? Looks like he has not come back from his surgery. Anyway, so with this background, I'll just put a question to, there are no questions in the question answer. That's the last session's questions. Yes. So teleradiology, Mr. Kishore Joshi, sending images across in a very good format, which can be analyzed later on and may be used for artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other things. There are two questions I have, both to you as well as to the ophthalmologist, our ophthalmologist, Dr. Senthil. The huge data you are collecting once you are taking these images, what security of the data, how you ensure that the data is secure, number one. Do you use this data for further machine learning and exploitation? Number two. Number three, if you do that, do you take consent from the user about this data usage for the future exploitation?
Yeah, I think sir is on mute.
So maybe Dr. Senthil, you can address it first before.
Yeah. So I think there are two questions. One is how is the data secure? So basically we store all these data in a secure Amazon cloud based service. So it is as secure as any data like your banking transaction or any other healthcare data. So it's stored in a very secure format. So there is no chance of any breach of the data. Second thing is, do you take consent? Yes, we take consent for all the patients for tele-ophthalmology consultation and then explaining about the pros and cons and everything. So only after the consent, we do the diagnosis for the patients. Third thing is about the exploitation. I'd like to say we don't use the data because it's the patient's own data. So we have been approached by a lot of companies for artificial intelligence and other things, but we felt that the patient is not given permission for that kind of an activity. So we don't use the data for any of those activities. But maybe in future, if there is a requirement for us to develop our own artificial intelligence, we will use the data after even the present consent gives us the permission to use the data, anonymized data of the patients. So if it is for our own purpose to improve the betterment of diagnosis, we'll definitely be using it, but not using it with a third party. But still, I don't think that is an exploitation, basically because still this process will definitely help in the patient care. And the telemedicine practice guidelines is clearly given that these can only be assistive tools and these cannot be so though artificial intelligence can help the physician or the ophthalmologist or the radiologist to diagnose, but still there is a radiologist who has to oversee, see and countersign. So basically, I think the system in India is secure as of now. So this will better the process of diagnosis because anyway there is a physician still going to be involved in the whole process. And we are also of the view that even if it's a normal patient or even if there is some retinopathy, any patient should still be seen by an ophthalmologist before a report goes out to the patient. That has been our policy.
Thank you. I have a cross question, but I think I'll do that after Mr. Joshi answers my queries.
Yes. So thanks. So taking further from Dr. what Senthil said, definitely from a security perspective, I think TRS or any other company which handles telehealth does utilize data centers and secure methods. Just like what he mentioned, we have platforms which are secure and in various parts of the world where there is data recovery, disaster, and all of those systems are available with full security. And furthermore, because some of the very nature of our data, especially in the imaging world, the data sizes are so huge, and some of the contracts where we work with, it just doesn't, we don't store the data for beyond 7 to 30 days. So, I mean, we just don't have that much, because otherwise it will end up having petabytes of data, and it will only make the likes of Amazon and Azure charge us a substantial amount of money. So it is based upon, so one of the requirements of whenever we have a requirement of a data for a very specific reason, we do have consent-based methodologies where we have some of the hospitals whom we work very closely with, we would have taken a consent for some of the data requirements, either for training purposes or for internal use or for all of those radiologist trainings and all. In addition, wherever we work with the hospitals very closely, there is also a due process of consent and institutional review board. There are IRBs which are available, which allow for proper usage of the data with proper consent, anonymization, and that is mainly in a retrospective studies only. We do not do for any prospective studies, any of those kind of. So there are perfect systems in place which allow for usage of the data, and it is not necessarily an exploitation, but it is a value add eventually for the hospital and for the benefit of the society. If there can be some insights generated which would help either make the standard of care improve in various aspects. So I think it definitely is a win-win situation, but as you rightly said, the security is an important and internal part which is very much there, and we ensure all of that is in place. The consents are taken very much as a part of the whole process wherever we need to use the data. And as a company, we don't sell any of the data. So that we are not in this business of trying to sell any of the image data or whatever. We only utilize the data for our own use. So that's where primarily, and if at all we are using it, it could be for our own AI development as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Joshi. A cross question to these both the thing is that you are using the data, you are storing as much as according to the availability of the storage space, and you use it for the benefit for the community. Agree. But how it is that when the patient comes to you, you are charging the patient or the beneficiary for the data, for the diagnosis. But once the diagnosis is done and that data is used for something else, for the benefit of third party or the community or whatever you say, isn't it it's a right of that person who has given the data to at least part share the benefits of that?
No, actually, that is what doctor also said. We don't give it to third parties. So we are, because the patient has our, I think both the organizations' principles are that we don't want to use the data because we will use it only for our own internal analysis, not for any third party analysis.
Yeah, okay, right. That's fine. But if you use an AI algorithm and a diagnostic tool, and you sell the diagnostic tool based on the the data of the trainee data, so how you feel the patient to be benefited the way the IP is generated based on the data which you are taking for the patients? I mean, it's a complex question, but I thought I'll just, in the absence of many questions in the chat box, I thought.
Actually, we don't do any AI, so we are not interested in doing AI or selling the AI. Yeah, I think doctor can.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Teleradiology solutions as such does not see directly any patients. So it is the hospitals which have access to the patients, and we have full watertight agreements with all the hospitals where, unless there is a consent for whatever reason, we don't utilize any of that data actually. So TRS does not use any of this kind of a data. The only data which we would ever use is for internal training of the radiologists, as just like doctors do it on a weekly basis for reviews, interesting cases and those kinds, so that to train. We do not use or any other data because that's explicitly forbidden by all our contracts. So at this point, TRS does not indulge in any kind of sale. When we have to look at a development of an AI, that's something which we take it from all third-party companies or whosoever out there, and they may have their own methods of how to get the data, and we integrate those AI tools within our workflow, and that's what we do, which will help us. That's all that we do in terms of making it efficient for the radiologist, and eventually the hospital benefits it because the reports become faster or it becomes much more, the quality improves over a period of time. So in a way, the patient has its benefits when we do implement or add on in a workflow the AI tools which are third-party developed. TRS doesn't develop its own AI at this point.
Okay. So you people are involved in, or this teleradiology is involved in high quality data transmission, store and forwarding. Now, the normal clinicians in their hospitals are using the simple click a photograph, send it to your consultant, have an advice, and then take an action. How you compare this sort of a practice? It's very useful. There's no doubt about that. Vis-a-vis your type of consultation services, if somebody just clicks a photograph, that like we very often we tell our junior colleagues when we are in the middle of night, they have some problem, we say, okay, click a photograph, take this thing, put an echo probe there, put in the chest, show us the image, and then we make an interpretation. How you compare these type of activities? Is there any way your knowledge can facilitate this? Because it's the cheapest way of getting the consultation.
Correct. What teleradiology, as such, the image acquisition which happens in a teleradiology platform is directly from the PACS system or the modality, whichever way, however it has been configured. So there is no loss of quality or rendering or any of those. So the radiologist who is seeing this data at the other side has full access to the data in terms of all its components, and therefore is able to make a better decision or a better diagnostic. The second aspect is that the reason why radiology services typically do not want to go the picture route is because there is typically a loss of image, except in the case of X-rays, where we have done a white paper where we have been able to prove that if you're taking the images on a light box which is at a particular distance and it is a fixed kind of a distance, you would be able to take high quality images which you can actually then convert into a DICOM, and then the diagnosis can be done in a similar fashion. But generalized picture or JPEG files and sent across on WhatsApp and any of those kind of things definitely have a limitation, and that's where the difference happens between a radiology service like TRS or any of the teleradiology providers, where the data is acquired on a very, very high quality and exactly the same way, the way ideally the radiologist at the hospital would have seen it and given the inputs. Now that's where the difference lies. As regards the availability of the doctor, I think that's where the value in certain cases lies, with certain time zone advantages which I mentioned. But that applies to cases where, if you're reading cases from the US or some of those regions. For India, I think there is no, if you're working within India itself, then there is no time zone advantage, and you would still need to have radiologists being awake at that particular time so as to be able to provide those high quality services. That's something which we cannot escape from that. We do provide those services in any case, but we do utilize all the high resolution data files which come straight from the modality or the PACS systems rather than depend on the JPEGs. Because along with the, what happens additionally along when you do with the PACS is you also get prior history, any prior images, all of that becomes easily accessible. The patient or maybe the intern there or the registrar there at the night may not have access to all of it or may not be able to take up all that when you're taking a picture, right? But from a PAC system, we would be able to retrieve all of that data. So a better picture is formed at our end, and the radiologist is better able to give a, the quality of output which comes as a report becomes far more better, because all the history is available, the clinical history, the images, past images, all of that becomes available, which may not be the case at a single transactional point when you're sending just a JPEG file or something.
Is there any possibility of future that the way, like I'll just give you an example. 2 decades ago, we used to send the CT scans from the hospital to the physician's home, and he will see and then advise what to do, whether needs a surgery or not. Then came the WhatsApp. Now we could take the images and just take it and send it to the expert. Now, do you think in the near future the smartphones will be able to directly take the data the way you are taking from the machine and transmit? Is there any possibility in near future?
I think we already utilize. It's not that the platforms that we use, the viewers can be opened on iPads and mobile devices. So there is perfect possibility, and we use it. Our radiologists, when they're traveling, do not have access to the typical radiology systems, right, in the airports and all. So they do use approved mobile devices like iPads and laptops, which allow for doing the diagnosis as well. So yes, definitely that is perfectly feasible. Now the question is how big a device is required, because certain times comparing, if you do need comparisons to be done between prior image, first image and all, then the screen size becomes an important aspect, and then the visualization forms an important piece. Other than that, the technology is already there where all of this can be streamed onto a mobile device as well, whether iPads or any of the tablets and any of that. And people do utilize it. It's not something which is not there even today. It's just a question of how good each person and individually is compatible in terms of, or comfortable in terms of reading from a smaller viewers or smaller, screen sizes as compared to a larger screen size, which they typically are used to during their training periods and, in the hospitals.
So, like in the last session, there was a tele-ICU, the speaker, an intensivist who was running the tele-ICU, they were talking of that. So, the whatever is being seen on the monitor can be displayed on the Android phone, and he can see get the first-hand information of the ECG, blood pressure, various waveforms directly. So if the same thing gets applied to this, it may be the next big thing, and is to exploit in the clinical scenario for the patient's management better. That's Absolutely. A good thing. So there is a question for what is the challenge in using anonymized data? Well, will anybody
I think
like
one of the challenge in using, it is not a question of challenge in using anonymized data. The important aspect is the data does not belong to you. So the process has to be a due process, needs to be followed in terms of ensuring that the consents are taken at the right place from the right people and the stakeholders before even an anonymized data is, and before you even anonymize the data and to use it for other applications.
No, actually, the thing is, we are mostly into the business of diagnosis. So we are not into, we are not a software company to develop the AI. So I think the core concept of what we want to do is to see more and more patients and diagnose more and more patients. So that is, so though the anonymized data and other things can be there, but still, we also feel that because it's not in alignment with our business goal. Our goal is to diagnose and not develop an artificial intelligence.
Yeah, but
there are lots of companies which are developing it, so we can use it if we require from one of those developed products.
But there's a good, the technology being used as an enabler or facilitator of the patient management, whatever way. That's a good thing which you have explained. Dr. Manoj Garg, are you around?
Yes, sir, I am.
Yeah, Dr. Manoj, you have been providing consultations to the patients. And one of the, you had talked about some limitations. Will you like to tell us more about these, the apprehensions of the user or the beneficiaries when they are talking to the doctors, and are they want to, they also want to be anonymized like the data, or is it they are free? Okay, and I mean, what do you say about that? And do you feel that just talking is good enough, or using a local network of providing some equipment to monitor little more than just history, providing that the person, like somebody can say, okay, go to this telemedicine center, go there, every facility will be there, you can attach a blood pressure monitor, you can attach any other machine. And do you think of exploiting that also, like mobile unit going to somebody's, not a doctor, the mobile, paramedic, just taking the things there and then having consultation, a little next step in the consultation rather than just talking on the phone?
So thanks for those questions. So two questions there. The first is, are there any apprehensions from users when it comes to using telemedicine, or is privacy a huge concern? So we do see that. So the way the privacy concern manifests is very different from, let's say, a tier 1 user and a tier 2 user. With the tier 1 user, it's the standard notion of privacy. My data is mine. Nobody should have access to it. I should have control on it, so on and so forth. Over there, the privacy is over identity. So we do offer a video consultation as well, but most patients opt for audio only. So they don't actually want to use the video. So for them, in fact, a big reason to use telemedicine turns out to be that they can stay anonymous, right? But that level of awareness of data ownership or data secrecy, that hasn't yet reached that population, right? So think of their for a large section of this audience, their sort of internet education or internet awareness or internet sophistication, whichever way you want to put it, is at the level where most of us were 15 years back, right? So when e-commerce also wasn't very readily used, there was Flipkart had barely started, maybe not even started, right? So a lot of people are apprehensive about even online shopping, let alone something as personal as a teleconsultation. So the way privacy plays out is slightly different. Next, would we like to use a physical network of telediagnostics? That would be wonderful. I think doctors would be extremely, extremely happy if that were available, because truth be told, it's impossible to put a diagnostic machine as cheap as one might be able to make it in every home. So a mobile unit that's available is going to be more than welcomed by doctors, but there are logistical issues there, right? India is a big country. Where all are you going to put those things, right? And typically what ends up happening is you have a problem, you want to get on, the point of getting online is often the speed as well. So on our platform, for instance, you can talk to a doctor within 10 minutes, right? So even if you go and place a request, by the time a mobile unit reaches your place, it's going to be too late, right? So that becomes a bit of a difficulty. I do know of solutions where these diagnostic units have been put in local health centers, and patients are expected to go there. The an ASHA worker would be there, and she would help take those do those limited diagnostics, blood pressure, temperature, so on and so forth. And in fact, those guys have gone a step beyond, and they've in fact put little medicine vending machines there as well, which only dispense what the doctor writes. So it ties into the doctor's electronic prescription. Right? So it's not like anybody can get any medicine out of it. It only gives out what the doctor writes. And they keep some basic salts there, not everything, of course. Everything can't be stocked. And because everything's digital, then you know what stocks are running low and you put stuff there. So yes, there is scope for making this a lot more sophisticated, but it requires a lot more capital. So the model that I'm talking to, I just mentioned, that's being done with state financial support. It's not in a private market. And it becomes sorry,
maybe
you're
maybe in the future, the way we are having automatic defibrillators installed at the airports and railway stations, we'll have the monitors installed. So anybody who wants consult, they can just go there, put up near those wearable sensors, and get in touch with the my Upchar. Okay. So we have. So welcome, Dr. Garewal. Dr. Garewal is an ophthalmologist, expert photography, and computer professional, and entrepreneur. So, Dr. Garewal, what do you see the current current status of digitization, and how these you have exploited, and how you think in the future this can be exploited more, both for the benefit of the patients as well as for the clinician, best optimum utilization of the facilities available in the country.
Thank you so much, Dr. Puri, to give me this chance. Sorry, I'm a little late. We are at a tipping point of the computerization into the medical field. We think that a lot has been done so far, but this is just a tip of the iceberg. The way the medicine will be practiced from 5 to 10 years from now will be entirely different. One is the EMR, or the electronic medical records, or the way you handle your OPD and the surgery. The amount of the papers that is printed with us at the moment, and the amount of the data that goes into is enormous. And we are practically a penless organization, not a paperless organization, but a penless organization, because each and every activity of the institute, right from the patient's registration, patient's medical records, history, their examination, all the examinations that are done, all the reports from all the different machines are into the EMR. All the HR activities are into the EMR. All our transport is into the EMR. All our consultations are into the EMR. We have a very well robust telemedicine thing, where each and every teleconsult is video recorded and kept in our records. So it takes care of our the quality. All our quality parameters are NABH and JCI. It is all again online. All those indices, parameters are within the EMR. So it has made a huge difference in the way it works. And as of today, with our staff, the situation is that if for some reason the server is down for some time, everybody is standing at his seats and they don't know what to do now. So it's that kind of a dependence that has come. And that is a change from when we started. There was so much of a reluctance from each consultant to use the EMR that I can't tell you how difficult it was, and how difficult it was for me to force it onto the staff to use the EMR. So that is one thing. And with AI, the EMRs are going to be under a sea change, with a lot of work being done by the AI for your part, prompting you on to do the things, and even telling you if you are going to make some error, or if there is some clash, or some two medicines are not like to be given to one patient, side effects, correlating the medicine prescribed with the history that you have felt. So we are going to see a lot of improvement in the EMR also, with the AI coming. The other two things are the telemedicine and teleconsult. I'm separating them too. Teleconsult is picking up a lot. It's so convenient for patient for the follow-up visit, or even the pre-visit consultation. So it is a good thing, and it is we have an audio-visual system, and we have it embedded into our EMR. And when I do a teleconsult, I have access to all the previous records of the patient, so it makes it very easy for me to talk to the patient and tell him what exactly is to be done. The second part is the telemedicine, where the adaptation of telemedicine will vary from field to field. radiology being all image based and no direct interaction with the patient will be the first, has been the first, where there will be maximum transformation taking place onto completely like working from home kind of a thing. And in our specialty, a lot of our equipment are imaging, so they can also be onto the telemedicine also. And if you look at the trends of the machines which are developing over the last 1 decade, practically each and every machine we have in the field, and in most of the fields in medicine, they are going to talk over the internet. They are going to have a remote access. They are going to have a remote viewing system. And it has really now with the Zeiss company, they have their own platform which is linked with our EMR, where any test done on any of their machines anywhere in the organization, any consultant can see it on their screen sitting. So by the time the patient moves from one cabin to other cabin, his record has already moved with it. So I see a big change. I also see a big role of the computerized professionals into medical field. So a lot of activities which are being done by the doctors at the moment are going to be taken care by the software, especially with the AI coming into it. Thank you so much.
Dr. Garewal, about telling what is the possibility and what you are already exploiting and what can be exploited. Well, as we have been listening about the tele ICUs and telemedicine and teleconsultations and other things, what the next step, the disruptive is the technology is the AI and machine learning, and for which the basic requirement is the electronic medical record and standardized electronic medical record. Once that is done, as teleradiology people were talking of other things, and so many other speakers were talking of, once you have standardized record keeping, and then the next thing is the machine learning on that part, and then the AI is a part of it. So I think electronic medical record is essential, and at this point of time, we are losing a lot of information which can be useful for the future generation. And we should try to implement. There is a very, even in US, when it was started in the 90s, there was a worry from the physicians. They never wanted everything in black and white. But over a period of time, slowly, everybody accepted it. And now nothing goes without anything being put into the computer automatically or manually. So that's about this. And presently, even like hospital like us, as you have seen our ICU with remote viewing, and even now, right when I'm talking to everybody, my phone is showing me the waveforms of my patients in ICU, so I can see what's happening to each and every patient. And same with the expert. One of the advantages of digitization of data is that expert advice, it can be presented to the experts, and the expert advice is available around the clock. Now, till now, we are only talking of preventive medicine, use of wearable sensors, diagnosis, early diagnosis, use of teleradiology, but the therapy, how much it helps in the therapy. I think psychiatry is one thing. We don't have a psychiatrist in our panel, but telepsychiatry is one of the way which we can help in the therapy. And then automatic control of robotic arms, robots. They will be able to not only deliver the drugs but also control the machines which provide the therapy. And as one of the machines which we made many years ago is the closed loop anesthesia delivery system. The reason was that 24 hours we don't have expert available in the OR. So even if a new trainee comes, he gives the drugs the way an expert gives. And if you put that, if you keep collecting the data and you put AI into that you are making that that system intelligent day by day. So I think these are the things in the future, as I said earlier, that though now we are talking of telehealth, but I think the future after 2 decades or 3 decades, it is just a part of health. There's no telehealth because this is the way we do things rather than a special way of doing things. I think if I would like, is there any questions in the audience and any suggestions? And if there's any of the panelists want to add something into this, we'll be happy. And
Yeah, no, definitely. As you said, Dr. Puri, we have exciting times to come in the future. And I definitely say that it may not necessarily be tele will, it's that prefix will get dropped and it becomes a part of our day-to-day health operations, where that becomes a way of standard of care. It's just looked upon originally as tele, but that becomes a part of life. Absolutely. And that's where we are heading to in the next couple of decades.
Dr. Senthil, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Senthil, please.
Yeah. As Dr. mentioned, I think there is a lot of opportunity coming up. Basically, what the players in telemedicine has to do is, I think we have to work in collaboration. Like teleradiology can always work in along with teleophthalmology and other specialties, because the hospitals are also looking at a unified solution. So basically, I think a lot of opportunities for collaboration between the players in the telemedicine space.
Yeah, in fact, I envisage that it will be majorly like an integrated image management and diagnostic. It will no longer be restricted to radiology or ophthalmology. Anything which is image based, maybe dermatology, pathology, histopath, eventually can get translated as a part of the whole digital scene, and that becomes more integrated and becomes therefore a future where the patient actually gets a holistic treatment as well, because all the data points are captured correctly.
Yeah. And I think only when the cost of the devices, the biggest issue for ophthalmology and radiology is the cost of the screening devices. So when the cost of the devices become lower and lower, I think the scalability will also become better.
Can I add one thing, Dr. Puri?
Yeah, Dr. Kariwal, please.
You see, with the use of the IT, more and more use of the IT into our medical field, into the hospitals and practices, we have to keep more and more budget for this. It's going to be expensive. All data capturing points need systems. You need a very robust backbone. You need a optical fiber network. You need especially if there are images, you need a huge image storing space. So which is again a recurring expense. Every year you have to increase. So it is something where right from the beginning of your practice or whatever you're starting, or a hospital is starting, the IT should have a very special budget and planning for the storage space in time to come and for the expansion also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are, nearing our, the time limit. And thank you all the panelists for giving the information and sharing their ideas, the views, and answering to the various queries. And thank you the CII for helping us for organizing such a nice webinar where we were able to exchange all these information. And I just want to conclude with this, that the future is electronic, as everybody is saying. The data is most important. The standardization and capturing of data should be focused the way the government is focusing, and we are providing electronic health card for each citizen, which will not only help the the patient and the physician, which will be able to access the complete history as well as any interventions which have been done, so that if he comes in unconscious state, he can be one can help in making a diagnosis quickly and start therapy quickly. But also the health economics people, they can plan the health the facilities to be provided to the citizen or to the various state planning. Once the health record of each individual is there, then what is the burden of diabetes, what is the burden of blindness, what's the burden of each disease, that can help in the health planning. But I think for all these things, what we need is data transmission to be fast, which the governments are providing the facilities, and of course the cheap device, and indigenization of, or maybe I should say at this point of time, whether the devices needs to be manufactured in India or to be assembled in India. But I think with the good IT infrastructure we have, we can at least add the value addition to these devices so that they can be made as usable, maximum usable, and we can exploit the intelligence, which may not be artificial intelligence, but the rule-based algorithms to be put in those devices in a much more advanced way. And here there's interaction between the technology experts and the physician. We need to have a platform which they can discuss more openly, and the technologists can see the need of the physician and put those cosmetics or value addition to the equipments which are made in India or abroad, and then exploit for the benefit of the patients and the community. With this, I thank you all my panelists once again, and thank you CII for giving us opportunity to share our views on all these things.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your kind words. Now, may I please extend my regards to all the speakers for sparing out time from their busy schedule and making this session and the conference a great success. Thank you for the comprehensive session. We look forward to have you in future endeavors of CII as well. May I take a minute to thank our sponsors for the event, without whom the event could not have been possible. Event partner TMT Law Practices, silver sponsor Teleradiology Solutions, and supporting partner association Sati. Thank you to each and everyone for their valuable time. Thank you so much. Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.